Lord Vader. Lord Vader, can you hear me? These were the first words that made it through Vader's audio receivers when he arose on the operating table. The last thing he remembered was searing, unyielding pain of fire scorching him down to his very organ tissue. He had lost his arm and his legs to his old friend and mentor. He had lost his wife, his unborn children, and his entire life as a Jedi. As the Chosen One, he even lost some of the power that defined his path of darkness. All he had left was a tomb of durasteel armor, cybernetic prosthetics, and the empire that he had chosen over his destiny. And of course, a new master, Darth Sidious. The pain and rage of all of it was too much for him to bear. He had destroyed everything in his life. He had destroyed the Jedi. He had destroyed his own family, all for the sake of saving his wife, only to learn that he had failed her too. Just as he had failed his mother so many years before on Tatooine. The dark side swelled within him. It lashed out at everything nearby. Medical droids were crushed against walls. Equipment sparked and exploded. The very room that had remade him nearly became his tomb once again. But none of that mattered now. The man he wanted to kill most, Obi-Wan Kenobi, was untouchable, light years away. The only thing left to his name was the dark side itself. Going from the hero with a heart of gold to the most feared Dark Lord of the Sith in galactic history was a quick and slippery slope. But what happened immediately after this? After Anakin Skywalker woke up on the operating table as a new monster of the dark side, what were his first steps as a champion of evil? What did he do with all his newfound power and pain? The answers began in that medical facility on Coruscant, where the man died and the machine was born. The first breath through the respirator was a mechanical gasp that echoed in the chamber. It sounded alien even to his own ears. The suit's systems whirred to life around him. Each servo motor and hydraulic joint moved with calculated precision, yet they felt like prison bars closing around him. He tried to move his fingers, but only felt the cold response of cybernetics. He tried to speak, but only heard the modulated baritone of the vocoder. The faceplate reflected his own distorted image back at him. A black mask with empty eye sockets. A monster staring back from the polished obsidian. The medical droids approached cautiously, their programming overridden by emergency protocols. They scanned his vital signs with trembling manipulators. Their sensors detected catastrophic emotional instability. Their logic processors calculated extreme danger. They were right to be afraid. With a gesture that felt both alien and instinctive, Vader crushed the nearest droid. Its metal frame crumpled like paper in his grasp. Sparks flew from its ruined circuitry. The other droids froze in place, their programming screaming at them to flee. Vader felt nothing but cold satisfaction at the destruction. The dark side fed on his rage. It grew stronger with each act of violence. Yet beneath the anger lay something else, something far more dangerous. Grief. Overwhelming, suffocating grief. For Padme, for the children he would never know, for the Jedi Order he had betrayed, for Anakin Skywalker, the man who no longer existed. The grief threatened to consume him, to drown him in sorrow. But the dark side offered another path, a way to transform pain into power. He focused on that power. He let it fill the emptiness inside him. He let it burn away the remnants of his former self. He let it forge him into something new, something terrible. The chamber doors slid open with a hiss. A figure entered, cloaked in darkness despite the bright lights. Darth Sidious approached the operating table. His yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction. His lips curved into a cruel smile. "Lord Vader," Sidious said, his voice a serpent's whisper. "Rise." Vader obeyed, his new body moving with mechanical grace. He stood before his master, a perfect instrument of destruction. "Your old life is gone," Sidious declared. "Anakin Skywalker died on Mustafar. What remains is Darth Vader, my apprentice, my enforcer." Vader nodded slowly, the movement stiff and unnatural. "Yes, Master." The voice that emerged was not his own. It was the voice of death itself, the voice of the dark side made flesh and steel. Sidious circled him like a predator, admiring its kill. "The suit will sustain you. It will make you stronger, but it is also your weakness, a reminder of your failure, a cage for your power." Vader clenched his fists, the cybernetic fingers whining with tension. "I understand, Master. The cage will not hold me forever." Sidious laughed, a dry rattling sound. "See that it doesn't. Now, we have work to do." The Emperor led him from the medical facility into the corridors of power. Imperial officers snapped to attention as they passed. Their faces paled at the sight of the black-clad giant. They felt the darkness radiating from him. They knew the age of the Sith had begun. Vader followed his master without question. His mind raced with possibilities, with plans for revenge, with dreams of domination. The galaxy would tremble before him. But first he needed to test his new abilities. He needed to prove himself worthy of the name. He needed to hunt, and Sidious knew exactly where to begin. The Jedi survivors would not escape their fate for long. As they walked, Vader felt the Force differently than before. It was no longer a river of light to be guided. It was an ocean of darkness to be commanded. Power surged through him, power unlike anything he had ever known. Yet with that power came a terrible price. The constant pain of his injuries, the suffocating confinement of the suit, the isolation behind the mask, the loss of everything he had ever loved. He pushed those thoughts away. Emotions were for the weak. Anakin Skywalker had been weak. Darth Vader would be strong, no matter the cost, no matter the suffering. Sidious stopped before a viewport overlooking Coruscant. The city planet stretched endlessly below them. Billions of souls unaware of the darkness that now ruled them. "Soon," Sidious murmured, "they will all know the power of the Sith." Vader gazed at the planet that had once been his home. He saw the Jedi temple in the distance, now a symbol of his betrayal. "What is my first command, Master?" Vader asked, his voice devoid of emotion. Sidious turned to face him, eyes gleaming with anticipation. "There are Jedi who survived Order 66, hiding in the shadows like rats. You will hunt them down. You will destroy them all. You will begin with Master Kirak and Phila." Vader felt a spark of excitement at the name. A worthy challenge. A test of his new abilities. "Where will I find him?" Vader asked, already planning the hunt. Sidious smiled, a predator's grin. "He has taken refuge on the river moon of Aldalim, meditating in isolation, believing himself safe. He will learn the error of his thinking. From you." Vader bowed his head in acknowledgement. "It will be done, my master." Sidious placed a hand on his shoulder. "Go, Lord Vader. Make the galaxy fear your name. Make them forget Anakin Skywalker ever existed." As Vader turned to leave, he caught his reflection in the transparent steel. A black demon staring back at him. The face of a nightmare. The face of his future. There was no going back now. The hunt would begin soon. The Jedi would fall. The galaxy would burn. And Darth Vader would rise from the ashes. But first, he needed a weapon worthy of his new power. A lightsaber to match the darkness within him, and he knew exactly where to find one. The weight of the armor pressed down on him like a physical manifestation of his new reality. Each step echoed through the sterile corridors of the Imperial Medical Center. The rhythmic hiss of the respirator became the metronome of his existence. Lord Vader moved through the facility like a shadow given form. Medical personnel scattered before him, instinctively recoiling from the darkness that clung to his presence. Darth Sidious walked beside him, a figure of deceptive frailty radiating immense power. The Emperor's voice slithered into Vader's audio receptors, smooth as oiled darkness. "Your transformation is complete, Lord Vader. But power without purpose is merely noise. You must learn to wield the darkness as a surgeon wields a scalpel. Vader turned his masked face toward his master, the blank lenses reflecting nothing. "I am ready, my master." The voice that emerged was a hollow baritone, stripped of all warmth. Sidious smiled, a thin, cruel stretching of lips. "We shall see. Your first lesson begins now." They entered a turbolift, descending deep into the heart of the facility. The walls around them were reinforced durasteel, scarred by past conflicts. The air grew colder, heavier with the scent of ozone and antiseptic. Vader felt the dark side swirling here, concentrated and potent. This was a place designed for pain and transformation. The doors slid open to reveal a cavernous training chamber. Its walls were lined with ancient Sith artifacts, their malevolent energy pulsing faintly. In the center stood a pedestal upon which rested a single, unadorned metal cylinder. Sidious gestured toward it with a gnarled finger. "Your weapon awaits, Lord Vader." Vader approached the pedestal slowly, each step deliberate. He reached out with his remaining organic hand, his cybernetic fingers hovering over the hilt. The moment his flesh touched the cool metal, a surge of energy shot through him. It was empty, a vessel waiting to be filled. A lightsaber without a crystal. "A Jedi's weapon draws power from a Kyber crystal," Sidious explained, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "It resonates with the light side of the Force. Such a crystal would reject you now. It would burn you from within. 10. You must acquire one that has been prepared." Vader understood instantly. He needed a crystal that had been bled, one that had been corrupted by the dark side, one that had known pain and suffering. Sidious continued, his tone almost conversational. "There is a Jedi who survived Order 66. Master Karak, in Fella," Vader stated, the name tasting like ash in his memory. Sidious nodded slowly, his yellow eyes gleaming with approval. "He has taken refuge on the river moon of Aldolim, meditating in solitude, believing himself safe. He guards his crystal fiercely." "You will go to Aldolim," Sidious commanded, his voice leaving no room for disobedience. "You will confront Karak in Fila. You will take his lightsaber, and you will bleed his crystal. This will be your first true test as a Sith Lord." Vader bowed his head, the movement stiff and mechanical. "It will be done, Master." Sidious placed a hand on his shoulder, the touch both possessive and warning. "Do not underestimate him, Lord Vader. He is a master of the Barash vow. He has forsaken all but the Force itself." The Barash vow. A Jedi ritual of extreme isolation and focus. A Jedi who took the vow became a weapon of pure light, detached from all worldly concerns. A formidable opponent even for one as powerful as Vader. The challenge ignited a cold fire within him. A shuttle awaited them on a private landing pad high above Coruscant's endless cityscape. The vessel was sleek and black, unmarked except for the Imperial crest. Vader boarded without a word, his movements economical and precise. Sidious remained behind, his presence a shadow on the landing pad. "Return to me with the crystal, Lord Vader, or do not return at all." The unspoken threat hung in the air as the shuttle's ramp sealed shut. Vader took his place in the command chair, the molded leather groaning under his weight. The pilot, a nervous-looking human in an Imperial uniform, dared not meet his gaze. "Set course for the Aldolim system," Vader ordered, his voice resonating through the cockpit. The journey through hyperspace was a blur of swirling blue light. Vader sat motionless, his mind focused on the task ahead. He reached out with the Force, stretching his senses across the stars. He felt the presence of Aldolim long before the shuttle dropped out of hyperspace. It was a world saturated with the light side of the Force. The river moon hung in the void like a jewel of emerald and sapphire. Its surface was dominated by vast, winding rivers and dense, primordial forests. Vader could feel the life teeming below, vibrant and untamed. And at its heart, a beacon of pure light. Turek, Infila. Turek, the shuttle descended through thick clouds, buffeted by turbulent winds. Rain lashed against the viewport, obscuring the landscape below. Vader felt the Jedi's presence grow stronger with each passing moment. It was calm, centered, utterly serene, a stark contrast to the storm raging within Vader's own soul. "Land near the river's edge," Vader commanded, his gaze fixed on a clearing ahead. The pilot obeyed, the shuttle settling onto the wet earth with a soft thud. The ramp lowered, revealing a world drenched in rain and shadow. Vader stood, his black armor a stark silhouette against the gray sky. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and alien vegetation. He stepped out into the deluge, the rain sizzling against his armor. The cold moisture was a distant sensation through the suit's insulation. He ignored it, his focus entirely on the presence ahead. Kirak Infila was close, meditating in a small stone temple overlooking the raging river. Vader moved through the forest with unnatural silence. His heavy boots left no imprint on the sodden ground. The native wildlife fled before him, sensing the predator in their midst. He felt the Jedi's awareness shift as he approached. The serene calm was replaced by sharp, focused attention. The temple was ancient, its stones worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. Vader entered without hesitation, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous interior. Kirak Infila stood at the far end, his back to the entrance. He was tall and powerfully built, his robes simple and unadorned. His lightsaber hung at his belt, a familiar cylinder of polished metal. "Anakin Skywalker," the Jedi said, his voice calm and resonant. He turned slowly, his face serene but his eyes filled with sorrow. "Or should I call you Darth Vader now?" Vader stopped a few paces away, his hand resting near his empty weapon. "The name no longer matters," he replied, his voice cold and metallic. Kirak Infila sighed, a sound of profound sadness. "The dark side has consumed you completely. I can feel the pain radiating from you like heat from a star." Vader felt a flicker of anger at the Jedi's pity. "Save your sympathy, Jedi. Lord, it will not save you." The Jedi Master shook his head slowly. "I do not seek to save myself. I seek only to maintain the balance, to stand against the darkness you represent." He unclipped his lightsaber, the green blade igniting with a snap hiss. The light filled the temple, pushing back the shadows. Vader remained still, his hand hovering near his own weapon. "Your light cannot pierce the darkness within me." Kirak Infila took a defensive stance, his movements fluid and graceful. "Then I will extinguish it. As I must extinguish all who serve the Sith." The battle began in a flash of emerald light. Kirak Infila was a master of Form 3, Soresu. His defense was impenetrable, a wall of light that deflected Vader's every blow. Vader pressed the attack, his movements powerful but hampered by the suit's bulk. He felt the Jedi's calm focus, his unwavering commitment to the light. It was infuriating. He reached out with the force, seizing a heavy stone pillar. With a gesture, he sent it crashing toward the Jedi Master. Kirak Infila leapt aside, the pillar shattering against the far wall. Dust and debris filled the air. Vader seized the moment, his hand shooting out. The force wrapped around the Jedi's throat like an invisible vise. Kirak Infila gasped, his green blade flickering. He dropped his lightsaber, his hands clawing at his throat. Vader tightened his grip, lifting the Jedi Master off his feet. He felt the life force draining from his opponent. The struggle was brief, almost anticlimactic. With a final desperate gasp, Kirak Infila went limp. Vader released his hold, letting the body crumple to the stone floor. The green lightsaber deactivated, its light extinguished. Silence descended upon the temple, broken only by the sound of Vader's breathing. He picked up the fallen weapon, its hilt cool in his grasp. The Kyber crystal within pulsed with faint residual light. It was pure, untainted, a beacon of the Jedi's former strength. Vader held it in his hand, focusing his will. He poured his pain, his rage, his grief into the crystal. He forced his darkness into its very heart. The crystal resisted, its light flaring brightly. Vader redoubled his efforts, his power surging like a tidal wave. He thought of Padme's death, of Obi-Wan's betrayal, of his own mutilation. He channeled all his suffering into the crystal. Slowly, inevitably, the light began to change. It shifted from green to yellow, then to a deep, bloody crimson. The crystal bled, its transformation complete. Vader ignited the lightsaber, and a blade of pure red fire sprang to life. The hum was deeper, more menacing than any Jedi weapon. It was a Sith blade forged in pain and hatred. Vader stood in the silent temple, the red blade casting long, dancing shadows. He had taken his first step as a true Sith Lord. He had claimed his weapon. He had bled the crystal. But as he looked at the fallen Jedi, he felt a flicker of something else. A ghost of the man he once was, a whisper of doubt in the roaring silence of his mind. He crushed the feeling beneath a wave of dark power. There was no room for weakness, no room for Anakin Skywalker. He deactivated the blade and clipped it to his belt. The mission was complete. He had proven himself to his master. But as he turned to leave the temple, he felt a strange sensation, a presence in the Force, faint but persistent. A ghost in the machine, a memory that refused to die. Vader ignored it, stepping out into the rain-soaked forest. The shuttle awaited his return, but something had changed within him, something beyond the bleeding of the crystal. The shuttle awaited his return, but something had changed within him, something beyond the bleeding of the crystal. He had taken a life. He had embraced the darkness fully, and yet a part of him mourned. A part of him wept for the Jedi Master he had slain. That part would have to be extinguished. Just like the light of the Kyber crystal, just like the life of Kirakin Fila, just like Anakin Skywalker, the shuttle lifted off from El Dolim, leaving the river moon behind. Vader stared out the viewport at the shrinking world. His reflection stared back, a black demon in red armor. The red blade at his side pulsed with dark energy. It was a weapon of terror, a symbol of his new identity, but it was also a reminder of the cost of his power, the cost of his betrayal, the cost of his very existence. And as the shuttle jumped to hyperspace, Vader knew that this was only the beginning. There would be more hunts, more deaths, more blood on his hands. The galaxy would learn to fear the name Darth Vader. But first, he had to return to Coruscant. He had to face his master, and he had to learn what other trials awaited him. The suit that sustained him was also his prison. And the prison had its own weaknesses, weaknesses that would soon be tested. The black armor that encased him was both salvation and damnation. Each component served a vital function, sustaining the ruined flesh beneath. Yet every system also represented a vulnerability, a weakness to be exploited. Lord Vader stood in the medical facility's observation chamber, gazing at his reflection in the transperisteel viewport. The face that stared back was not his own. It was a mask of polished obsidian, angular and menacing. The lenses glowed with faint crimson light, hiding the eyes that had once been blue. The respirator's grill formed a permanent grimace, a mockery of human expression. This was the face the galaxy would come to fear, the face of Darth Vader. Beneath the armor lay a landscape of agony. Third-degree burns covered 90% of his body. His lungs were scarred tissue, barely capable of drawing breath without mechanical assistance. His spine was reinforced with durasteel rods, fused to what remained of his vertebrae. Every movement sent jolts of pain through his nervous system. The suit's life support systems whirred constantly, a symphony of survival. Oxygen regulators pumped purified air into his damaged lungs. Nutrient feeds delivered essential sustenance directly into his bloodstream. Temperature control units maintained his body at precisely 36.7 degrees Celsius. Without these systems, he would die within minutes. Darth Sidious entered the chamber, his presence filling the space with palpable darkness. The suit is complete, Lord Vader. It will sustain you where your own body cannot. Vader turned slowly, the servo motors in his joints whining soft. It is a cage, Master. Sidious smiled, a thin, cruel stretching of lips. All power requires sacrifice. Your sacrifice has made you stronger than any Jedi. Stronger than you ever were as Anakin Skywalker. Vader's fists clenched, the cybernetic fingers grinding together. The armor limits my mobility. It protects you from your own weakness, Sidious countered smoothly. Without it, you would be helpless. A burned husk gasping for air. Is that what you desire? Vader remained silent, the respirator's hiss filling the space between them. The Emperor approached, his yellow eyes gleaming with predatory intelligence. The suit has been designed with specific vulnerabilities, deliberate weaknesses to ensure your obedience. Vader felt a surge of anger at this revelation. You would cripple your own apprentice. I would ensure my apprentice never becomes a threat, Sidious corrected. The chest plate is susceptible to precise blaster fire. The life support controls can be disabled by a well-placed ion strike. The mask's lenses can be shattered by focused energy bursts. These are not flaws, Lord Vader. They are reminders of your place. Vader's rage simmered beneath the surface, a cold fire in his soul. He understood now. The suit was not just a life-sustaining system. It was a leash, a constant reminder of his dependence on his master. The weight of the armor is significant, Sidious continued, circling him like a shark. Nearly 20 kilograms of durasteel and composite materials. It slows your movements, reduces your agility. A Jedi could exploit this weakness in combat. Vader's jaw tightened beneath the mask. I will adapt, he stated, his voice a low growl. Sidious laughed, a dry rattling sound. Adaptation is the path to power, Lord Vader. Overcome these limitations, make them your strengths, or they will become your tomb. A medical droid approached cautiously, carrying a datapad. Lord Vader, the initial diagnostics are complete. All systems are functioning within acceptable parameters. Vader turned his attention to the droid, his presence causing it to shudder. Explain the vulnerabilities. The droid's manipulators trembled as it accessed the data. The chest plate contains the primary life support regulator. A direct hit to this area could cause catastrophic failure. The breathing apparatus relies on 3 separate filters. If all 3 are compromised simultaneously, oxygen deprivation will occur within 90 seconds. The helmet's environmental seal is critical, the droid continued nervously. Any breach could expose your damaged respiratory system to contaminants. The optical sensors are calibrated for standard atmospheric conditions. Extreme light or darkness could temporarily blind you. The vocoder is linked directly to your vocal cords. Damage to this system could render you mute. Vader absorbed this information with cold detachment. Each weakness was a potential death sentence. Each vulnerability, a weapon his enemies could use against him. He would need to compensate for them all. The suit also contains monitoring systems, Sidious added, his voice dripping with satisfaction. I will always know your location, your vital signs, your emotional state. You can never hide from me, Lord Vader. Vader felt a wave of fury wash over him. To be so completely controlled, so utterly dependent. It was intolerable, but he had no choice. The suit was his only chance at survival. His only chance at revenge. I understand, Master, he said, his voice devoid of emotion. Sidious nodded, apparently satisfied with his submission. Good. Now, we must test your capabilities in the field. Your first mission awaits. Vader followed the Emperor from the observation chamber, his mind racing with possibilities. He would need to modify the suit, reinforce the weak points, develop new fighting techniques to compensate for his reduced mobility. He would turn these weaknesses into strengths, or die trying. They entered a briefing room where an Imperial officer stood at attention. The officer's face paled as Vader entered, his presence filling the room with dread. "Lord Vader," the officer stammered, snapping a crisp salute. "Your shuttle is prepared for departure." "Destination?" Vader demanded, his voice resonating with authority. The officer swallowed nervously before responding. "The planet Gattering, my lord. Intelligence reports indicate a Jedi survivor is hiding among the local population. Your orders are to eliminate the target and retrieve any sensitive materials." Vader turned to Sidious, seeking confirmation. The Emperor nodded slowly. "A simple mission to test your new capabilities. Do not disappoint me, Lord Vader." Vader bowed his head in acknowledgement. "I will not fail, Master." As he walked toward the shuttle, Vader felt the weight of the armor more than ever before. Each step was a reminder of his limitations, each breath a testament to his dependence on technology. The suit was his prison, but it was also his key to power. He boarded the shuttle, the ramp sealing behind him with a hydraulic hiss. The pilot kept his eyes fixed on the controls, refusing to look at the black-clad monster in the command chair. Vader ignored him, his thoughts focused on the mission ahead. Gattering, a backwater planet on the edge of Imperial space. The perfect place to test his new abilities. The journey through hyperspace was uneventful, giving Vader time to contemplate his situation. The suit's systems functioned flawlessly, maintaining his body's delicate balance. Yet he felt every circuit, every wire, every component as if they were part of his own flesh. He was no longer fully human, nor was he fully machine. He was something in between. Something new. Something new. Something new. Something new. Something terrifying. The shuttle dropped out of hyperspace, revealing Gattering below. It was a harsh, desert world, its surface dominated by towering sand dunes and rocky mesas. Scattered settlements clung to the few oasis regions, their primitive structures barely visible from orbit. Vader felt the Jedi's presence immediately, a faint light in the vast darkness. "Land near the northern settlement," Vader commanded, his voice cutting through the cockpit's silence. The pilot obeyed, guiding the shuttle toward a clearing in the rocky terrain. The descent was rough, buffeted by strong winds that whipped sand across the viewport. Vader stood as the shuttle touched down, his black armor a stark contrast to the golden sands. The ramp lowered, revealing a landscape bathed in the harsh light of Gattering's twin suns. The air was hot and dry, filled with fine particles of sand that glittered in the light. Vader's environmental systems immediately adjusted, filtering the air and maintaining his internal temperature. He stepped out into the desert, his heavy boots sinking slightly into the soft sand. The settlement was a cluster of crude buildings constructed from local stone and scavenged materials. Dust-covered inhabitants moved about their daily tasks, oblivious to the danger approaching. Vader moved through the desert with unnatural silence, his presence causing local wildlife to scatter in terror. He felt the Jedi's fear as he approached, a ripple in the Force that grew stronger with each step. The target was hiding in a storage building near the edge of the settlement. Vader entered without hesitation, his shadow falling across the terrified inhabitants. The Jedi was a young human, barely out of his teens. His eyes widened in recognition as Vader entered. "Anakin Skywalker," he whispered, his voice trembling. Vader raised his hand, the Force wrapping around the Jedi's throat, saying, "That name is dead," he stated coldly. The Jedi struggled futilely against the invisible grip. "The Force is strong with you," he gasped. "But you serve the darkness now." Vader tightened his grip, feeling the life force draining from his victim. "The darkness is power," he replied. "Wait." The Jedi's eyes rolled back in his head as he lost consciousness. Vader released his hold, letting the body crumple to the dusty floor. He searched the building, finding a hidden compartment containing Jedi holocrons and data crystals. These would be valuable to his master. As he turned to leave, a blaster bolt struck his chest plate. The impact sent a jolt of pain through his body, causing the suit's systems to momentarily flicker. Warning alarms blared in his helmet, alerting him to the damage. Vader turned slowly, his rage building like a storm. A local merchant stood trembling in the doorway, a smoking blaster in his hands. "Monster!" he shouted, firing another shot. This time Vader was prepared. He raised his hand, deflecting the bolt with the force. It ricocheted off the wall and struck the merchant in the chest. The man fell without a sound, his life extinguished instantly. Vader approached the body, his breathing heavy and labored. The chest plate was scorched where the bolt had struck, the durasteel weakened. A direct hit to that spot could have been catastrophic. The suit's vulnerability had been exposed. Sidious's warning echoed in his mind. The chest plate is susceptible to precise blaster fire. This simple merchant had nearly ended him. The realization was both terrifying and infuriating. Vader crushed the blaster in his hand, the metal groaning under the pressure. He would need to reinforce the armor, develop new defensive techniques. Never again would he be so vulnerable. He gathered the Jedi artifacts and departed the settlement, his pace quick and purposeful. The shuttle awaited his return, its ramp lowering as he approached. The pilot kept his eyes averted as Vader boarded, his presence radiating barely contained fury. The journey back to Coruscant was spent in silence. Vader's mind focused on his weakness. The suit's life support systems functioned normally, but he felt every vibration, every hum as a potential threat. He was a walking target, his survival dependent on technology that could fail at any moment. Sidious awaited him in the medical facility, his expression unreadable. "Report, Lord Vader." Vader bowed his head, the movement stiff and mechanical. "The target has been eliminated, Master. Jedi artifacts recovered." "Excellent," Sidious replied, his voice smooth as silk. "And the suit, how did it perform?" Vader hesitated for a fraction of a second. The chest plate sustained damage from a blaster bolt. The systems compensated, but the vulnerability is confirmed. Sidious nodded slowly, his yellow eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "As expected, you will need to adapt your fighting style to compensate. Never allow an enemy to strike that area." Vader felt a surge of resentment at his master's casual attitude toward his mortality. "I will not fail again, Master," he stated, his voice cold and hard. Sidious smiled, a predator's grin. "See that you don't, Lord Vader. The galaxy is full of those who would exploit weakness. Even the weakness of a Sith Lord." As Vader stood before his master, he felt the weight of the armor more than ever before. It was a symbol of his power, a testament to his survival, but it was also a reminder of his dependence, his vulnerability. A single spark of electricity could end him. A well-placed blaster shot could silence the respirator forever. The galaxy would never know the man beneath the monster. Only the legend of Darth Vader would remain, a legend forged in pain and darkness. The corridors of the Venator-class Star Destroyer Interrogator echoed with the synchronized footsteps of armored soldiers. Each boot strike resonated against the durasteel deck plates, a percussive rhythm of discipline and duty. Lord Vader moved through their ranks like a shadow given form, his black armor absorbing the light as he passed. The 501st Legion, once known as Skywalker's Fist, now stood at attention as their new commander approached. Their white armor bore the distinctive blue markings of their unit, a stark contrast to Vader's obsidian presence. The clones had served under Anakin Skywalker during the Clone Wars, following him through countless battles across the galaxy. They had witnessed his heroism, his tactical brilliance, and his fierce loyalty to his men. Now they served Darth Vader, a figure of terrifying power and unknown origin. The transition had been seamless on the surface, but beneath the armor, confusion and fear. They obeyed without question, yet the memory of their former general lingered like a ghost. Vader stopped before the assembled legion, his gaze sweeping across the identical faces hidden behind their helmets. The Jedi Order has been eliminated, his voice boomed, amplified by the suit's external speakers. The Republic has been reformed into the Galactic Empire. You are now soldiers of the Empire, instruments of the Emperor's will. Your loyalty will be absolute. A clone commander stepped forward, his armor bearing the rank markings of an officer. Sir, the 51st stands ready to serve. Vader turned his attention to the commander, his presence causing the air to crackle with tension. Commander Apo, he stated, recognizing the voice from the Battle of Coruscant. Your service during the Clone Wars has been noted, but the past is irrelevant. Apo stiffened under the scrutiny. Understood, Lord Vader. What are our orders? Vader gestured toward the holographic display that had materialized in the center of the deck. It showed a remote planetoid in the outer rim, its surface dotted with ancient ruins. Intelligence indicates a Jedi survivor has established a hidden enclave there. Your legion will assault the position and eliminate all resistance. No prisoners are to be taken. The Jedi must be completely eradicated. Apo saluted crisply. It will be done, my lord. The interrogator dropped out of hyperspace near the planetoid, its massive hull blotting out the distant stars. Below, the ruins of an ancient civilization sprawled across the rocky terrain, half buried by centuries of dust and decay. Vader stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he studied the tactical display. The 5 aligned First's gunships were already descending toward the surface, their engines roaring as they pierced the thin atmosphere. Deploy the Legion to the eastern sector, Vader commanded, his voice devoid of emotion. The Jedi's stronghold is located in the central temple complex. I will lead the assault personally. Apo hesitated for a fraction of a second. My lord, that sector is heavily fortified. Your concern is noted, Commander, Vader replied coldly, but unnecessary. Prepare my shuttle. Apo bowed his head. At once, Lord Vader. The shuttle descended through the planetoid's thin atmosphere, buffeted by turbulent winds that whipped dust across the viewport. Below, the ancient temple rose like a jagged tooth against the pale sky, its stone walls weathered by millennia of neglect. Vader felt the Jedi's presence like a beacon of light in the surrounding darkness. It was strong, focused, and utterly unaware of the doom approaching. The shuttle landed in a clearing near the temple entrance, its ramp lowering with a hydraulic hiss. Vader stepped out into the harsh light, his black armor a stark silhouette against the golden sand. The 501 First had already secured the perimeter, their blasters trained on the temple's entrance. Clone troopers moved with practiced efficiency, setting up heavy repeating blasters and portable shield generators. Lord Vader, Apo reported, saluting as he approached. The entrance is sealed. We're preparing breaching charges. Vader raised his hand, the force swirling around him like a visible miasma. That will not be necessary. With a gesture, he tore the massive stone doors from their hinges, sending them crashing into the temple's interior. The sound of grinding rock echoed across the clearing, followed by the startled cries of those within. 501 First surged forward, their blasters opening fire on the defenders who scrambled to respond. Vader led the charge, his crimson lightsaber igniting with a snap hiss that cut through the chaos. The temple's defenders were a mix of Jedi Padawans and local militia, poorly armed and unprepared for the assault. They fought with desperate courage, but they were no match for the disciplined soldiers of the 51st. Vader moved through their ranks like a force of nature, his blade a blur of crimson death. Each strike was precise, lethal, and utterly without mercy. The Jedi Master, responsible for the Enclave, emerged from the inner sanctum, his green lightsaber blazing as he confronted Vader. Anakin Skywalker, he gasped, his eyes wide with disbelief. What have you become? Vader advanced without responding, his blade clashing against the Jedi's in a shower of sparks. The duel was brief and brutal. The Jedi Master was skilled, but he was no match for Vader's power and rage. Within moments his green blade was extinguished, his lifeless body crumpling to the stone floor. The remaining defenders surrendered, their weapons clattering to the ground as they realized the futility of resistance. Vader turned to Apo, his blade still humming with dark energy. "Execute the prisoners. Leave no survivors." Apo hesitated, his training warring with his sense of honor. "My lord, they have surrendered." "They are enemies of the Empire," Vader stated, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Their fate is sealed." Apo nodded slowly, his expression hidden behind his helmet. "As you command, Lord Vader." The 501 First carried out the order with chilling efficiency, their blasters ending the lives of the surrendered defenders without hesitation. Vader watched impassively, his mind already moving to the next objective. The Jedi threat had been neutralized, but there would be others, survivors hiding in the shadows plotting their revenge. As the Legion secured the temple, Vader felt a flicker of something unfamiliar. It was not regret or remorse, emotions he had buried long ago. It was something else, something deeper and more troubling. A sense of connection to these soldiers who followed him without question. A reminder of the man he once was. He crushed the feeling beneath a wave of dark power. There was no room for weakness, no room for the past. Only the present mattered. Only the Empire. The 501 First formed up outside the temple, their armor stained with dust and blood. Apo approached Vader, his posture rigid with respect. "The objective is secure, Lord Vader. All Jedi have been eliminated." Vader nodded slowly, his gaze sweeping across the Legion. "Your service has been adequate, Commander. The Emperor will be pleased." Apo straightened at the rare praise. "Thank you, my lord." Vader turned toward the waiting shuttle, his mind already focused on the next mission. As he boarded the shuttle, he heard the clones whispering among themselves. "Did you see that?" one asked. "He moved like the general," another replied. "But darker, much darker." Vader ignored their comments, his thoughts turning to the future. The 501 First would be his instrument, his weapon in the coming war against the Jedi survivors. They would follow him without question, their loyalty absolute, but he wondered if they followed him out of fear or respect, or if they followed the ghost of Anakin Skywalker. The shuttle lifted off from the planetoid, leaving the temple ruins behind. Vader stared out the viewport at the shrinking world, his reflection a black demon in the crimson light. The 501 First marched behind him, their loyalty unwavering. But as the ship jumped to hyperspace, Vader couldn't shake the feeling that their loyalty was to the Empire, not to the monster he had become, and certainly not to the man he once was. The ghost of Anakin Skywalker lingered, a whisper in the Force that refused to be silenced. And somewhere in the depths of his soul, a part of him mourned the loss. The stolen Star Destroyer hung in the void like a dagger of midnight, its hull scarred by battle and neglect. Sidious had presented it as a gift, a twisted token of favor to his newly forged apprentice. The Devastator, the Emperor had peered, his voice dripping with false generosity. "A vessel worthy of your power, Lord Vader." Yet Vader knew it was no gift. It was a test, a trap disguised as opportunity. The ship had been seized from separatist holdouts, its systems compromised, its crew executed. Only the cold, silent machinery remained, and the ghosts of its former masters. Vader stood on the bridge, his black armor absorbing the dim emergency lighting. The viewscreen displayed the swirling sands of Gattering below, a desolate world baking under twin suns. Intelligence reports indicated a Jedi survivor had taken refuge among the slave pits of Keldebe. A perfect target to test both his new capabilities and the Devastator's worthiness. "Set course for the northern continent," he commanded, his voice resonating through the empty bridge. The descent was brutal. Gattering's atmosphere was thick with abrasive particulates that scoured the destroyer's hull like sandpaper. Turbulence rocked the massive vessel, its inertial dampeners groaning under the strain. Vader remained motionless in the command chair, his gloved hands resting on the armrests. Each jolt sent fresh waves of pain through his ruined body, a constant reminder of his fragility. The shuttle bay doors opened with a groan of protesting metal. Vader descended the ramp into a maelstrom of wind and sand. The storm was a living thing, howling with the voices of the damned. Fine grit penetrated every joint of his armor, grinding against the sensitive cybernetics beneath. His environmental systems whirred loudly, struggling to filter the toxic air. Ahead lay the slave encampment, a miserable collection of hovels huddled against a rocky outcrop. Guard towers loomed over the compound, their searchlights cutting through the swirling sand. Slavers in mismatched armor patrolled the perimeter, their blasters held loosely. They were predators, but they had never encountered a predator like Vader. He moved through the storm like a phantom, his heavy boots leaving no prints in the shifting sands. The Force wrapped around him like a cloak, bending light and sound to hide his approach. A guard turned suddenly, his eyes widening behind his visor. Before he could raise his blaster, Vader's hand shot out. The guard's neck snapped with a sickening crack, his body crumpling silently into the sand. The compound's alarm system blared to life, its klaxons wailing over the storm's fury. Slavers poured from their barracks, firing wildly into the darkness. Vader walked calmly toward the main gate, his crimson blade igniting with a snap hiss that cut through the chaos. Blaster bolts ricocheted off his armor, leaving scorch marks but no real damage. He reached the gate and placed his palm against the durasteel surface. The metal groaned and buckled under the pressure, tearing free from its hinges with a tortured shriek. The slavers froze, their weapons lowering as they witnessed the impossible. Vader stepped through the ruined gateway, his blade casting long, dancing shadows across the terrified faces. The Jedi emerged from the largest hut, his blue lightsaber blazing defiantly. "Anakin Skywalker," he shouted over the storm. "I should have known you'd come for me." Vader advanced without speaking, his blade a crimson blur as it clashed against the Jedi. The duel was brief and brutal, the Jedi's skills no match for Vader's raw power and tactical brilliance. With a final vicious strike, Vader disarmed his opponent. The blue blade extinguished, clattering to the ground. Vader raised his hand, the Force wrapping around the Jedi's throat like an invisible vise. The Jedi gasped, his face turning purple as he struggled against the invisible grip. "Your rebellion ends here," Vader stated coldly. The Jedi's eyes rolled back in his head as he lost consciousness. Vader released his hold, letting the body crumple to the dusty ground. He turned his attention to the cowering slaves, their faces pressed against the barred windows of their pens. "You are free," he announced, his voice devoid of emotion. "The Empire has no use for weakness." The slaves hesitated, disbelieving. Vader gestured toward the open gate. "Go," he commanded, "before I change my mind." They needed no further encouragement, streaming past him into the storm like a human river. Vader watched them go, his mind already turning to the next phase of his mission. As he turned to leave, a blaster bolt struck his shoulder pauldron. The impact spun him around, the suit's alarms blaring in his helmet. A slaver chieftain stood trembling in the doorway of a barracks, a smoking blaster in his hands. "Monster," he shouted, firing again. This time Vader was ready. He raised his hand, deflecting the bolt with the Force. It ricocheted off a nearby rock and struck the chieftain in the chest. The man fell without a sound, his life extinguished instantly. Vader approached the body, his breathing heavy and labored. The shoulder armor was scorched where the bolt had struck, the durasteel weakened. Another vulnerability exposed. Sidious's warning echoed in his mind. "The suit has weaknesses, Lord Vader. Enemies will exploit them." This primitive slaver had nearly ended him with a single shot. The realization was both terrifying and infuriating. He crushed the blaster in his hand, the metal groaning under the pressure. The Devastator awaited his return, a symbol of his newfound power. But it was also a reminder of his dependence on technology, on the Emperor's favor, on the fragile systems that kept him alive. The journey back to the ship was spent in silence. Vader's mind racing with possibilities. He would need to reinforce the armor, develop new defensive techniques. Never again would he be so vulnerable. The destroyer was his now, a weapon of immense power. But as he boarded the shuttle, he felt a strange sensation, a flicker of something beyond pain and rage, a sense of accomplishment, of ownership. The Devastator was more than a ship. It was a statement, a declaration that Darth Vader had arrived, that he would not be contained, not by the suit, not by Sidious, not by anyone. The shuttle lifted off from Gattering, leaving the storm behind. Vader stared out the viewport at the shrinking world. His reflection stared back, a black demon in crimson armor. The destroyer was his, but the wound whispered a truth he could not ignore. Even machines bleed. The shuttle ramp hissed open onto the sterile bay of the Devastator, the air thick with the scent of ozone and recycled atmosphere. Lord Vader moved down the ramp with deliberate, heavy steps, each footfall echoing like a tolling bell in the cavernous hangar. The blaster wound on his shoulder. Pauldron smoked faintly. The scorched durasteel puckered and blackened. Pain lanced through the damaged cybernetics beneath, a sharp, unwelcome reminder of his mortality. Medical droids scurried forward, their manipulators extended, ready to assess and repair the breach in his formidable armor. They led him not to a standard med bay, but to a specialized engineering bay, deep within the destroyer's armored core. Here, the tools were not for flesh, but for machine. Hydraulic lifts whirred as Vader stepped onto a reinforced platform, his massive frame settling with a groan of stressed metal. The droids worked with swift, silent efficiency, their optical sensors scanning the damaged pauldron with clinical detachment. Structural integrity compromised at 72% efficiency. One droned, its voice a flat monotone. The removal of the shoulder piece revealed the intricate network of wiring and servo motors beneath. A bundle of fiber optic cables had been severed, their ends glowing faintly with residual energy before winking out. Coolant fluid, thick and viscous, oozed from a ruptured line, dripping onto the deck with a soft, rhythmic patter. The droids clamped and sealed, their laser cutters hissing as they trimmed away the melted and ruined components. Each touch sent fresh jolts of agony through Vader's nervous system, translated into sharp bursts of static within his helmet's audio receptors. The physical torment was immense, a constant grinding pressure against his shattered will. But worse was the humiliation. A primitive slaver, armed with nothing more than a common blaster, had breached his defenses, had brought the Dark Lord of the Sith low. The suit, his tomb, his shield, his very lifeline, had proven inadequate, vulnerable. He closed his eyes behind the mask, focusing inward, drawing on the dark side to numb the pain. The power surged, cold and vast, momentarily eclipsing the agony. Yet, beneath the surface, the weakness remained. A flaw in the machine, a flaw in the man. The repair droids worked tirelessly, replacing severed cables with fresh conduits, patching the coolant line, reinforcing the internal structure of the pauldron with microwave durasteel mesh. Finally, they presented the newly forged piece, its surface polished to a deep obsidian sheen, subtly thicker than before. With practiced movements, they locked it back into place over his shoulder, the magnetic seals engaging with a series of satisfying clicks. The external damage was repaired, the armor restored to its imposing perfection. But Vader knew the truth. The vulnerability remained. A single, well-placed shot could still cripple him, could silence the respirator, could extinguish the Dark Lord. As if summoned by his thoughts, the familiar, chilling presence of Darth Sidious filled the engineering bay. The Emperor materialized from the shadows, his hood drawn low, his yellow eyes gleaming with cold appraisal. He circled the platform where Vader stood, his gaze lingering on the newly repaired shoulder. "The suit is damaged," Sidious stated, his voice a serpent's whisper that cut through the hum of machinery. Vader remained rigid, his fists clenched at his sides. "The mission was successful, Master. The Jedi is eliminated. The Devastator is secured. His voice was a low growl, the vocoder struggling to contain the simmering rage beneath. Success tainted by failure, Sidious hissed, stopping directly in front of him. A common thug, a blaster pistol, and Lord Vader is brought to his knees. Pathetic. The word hung in the air, sharp and poisonous. Humiliation burned hotter than Mustafar's lava. Vader fought the urge to lash out, to crush the droids, to shatter the very walls of the bay. But he knew such displays only pleased Sidious, confirmed his assessment of weakness. The weakness has been identified, Master, Vader forced out, the words like gravel in his throat. It will not be exploited again. Sidious smiled, a thin, cruel stretching of lips that revealed nothing of warmth. See that it does not, Lord Vader. The suit is your strength, but it is also your leash. Remember that. He turned to leave, his robe swirling around him like a shroud. Prepare yourself. Your next trial awaits. The Emperor departed as silently as he arrived, leaving Vader alone with the humming droids and the suffocating weight of his armor. The repaired pauldron felt heavier than before, a constant, pressing reminder of his failure. He recalled ancient Sith texts, fragments of lore studied briefly in the Jedi archives, now resurfacing with chilling clarity. Legends spoke of Sith Lords who fortified their armor against specific threats, weaving dark side rituals into the very metal, techniques to deflect blaster bolts, to absorb energy, even to resist the devastating touch of Force lightning. Sidious had deliberately denied him such enhancements, left him exposed, vulnerable, a test, or perhaps simply another layer of control. Vader raised his repaired arm, flexing the fingers within the black gauntlet. The servos whined softly, a sound that once signified power, now whispered fragility. He stared at his reflection in the polished chrome of a nearby console. The black mask stared back, impassive, terrifying. A monster, a machine. But beneath the mask, beneath the armor, the man raged. Anakin Skywalker's fury mingled with Darth Vader's cold resolve. The humiliation would fuel him. The weakness would be purged. He would adapt. He would overcome. The suit's seals hissed shut as the droids completed their final diagnostics. All systems operational, one reported flatly. Structural integrity 100%. Vader stepped down from the platform, the repaired pauldron feeling strangely alien against his shoulder. He walked towards the exit, his stride purposeful, each step a declaration. As the engineering bay doors slid open, revealing the stark corridors of the Devastator, Vader made a silent vow. No blaster would ever touch him again. He would become the storm, the darkness incarnate, untouchable, unstoppable. But the Force, ever treacherous, whispered a counterpoint. A vision flickered behind his eyes, not of blasters, but of crackling blue energy, of lightning. Sidious's lightning. And the suit, for all its durasteel and cunning design, remained woefully inadequate against that particular threat. As the doors sealed behind him, Vader's fist clenched. The suit was his prison, his shield, his weakness, and the galaxy held far worse weapons than a slaver's blaster. He had much to learn, much to endure, and the Force had other plans. The sterile corridors of Brighthome Station hummed with the quiet efficiency of a facility long abandoned by its original builders. Its gleaming white walls, once a testament to Republic ingenuity, now served as a clandestine refuge for the Empire's most wanted. Lord Vader moved through these halls like a specter of death, his black armor absorbing the ambient light, his respirator's rhythmic hiss, the only sound breaking the oppressive silence. Clone troopers of the 1st assigned as a garrison under the guise of routine maintenance snapped to attention as he passed, their hidden unease palpable even through their helmets. They knew why he was truly here. The station's central command center bustled with activity, technicians monitoring long-range sensors and communications relays. Vader's presence silenced the room instantly, all eyes turning toward the towering figure framed in the doorway. "Report," he commanded, his voice a low, resonant growl that vibrated in the chest plates of every soldier present. The ranking officer, a captain with a freshly polished insignia, stepped forward, his posture rigid with forced composure. "All sectors secure, Lord Vader. No unauthorized transmissions detected. The Jedi archives remain isolated as per your orders." Vader's gaze swept across the room, lingering on a bank of monitors displaying the station's outer hull and the endless star field beyond. "The isolation is insufficient," he stated flatly. "The archives are not merely data repositories, they are beacons. Beacons that draw those who would seek the knowledge of the Fallen Order." He turned his full attention to the captain, the weight of his presence causing the officer to shift uncomfortably. "I will access the archives direct. Ensure no one, repeat, no one, approaches Sector Gamma without my explicit command." The captain swallowed hard, the sound barely audible over the station's life support systems. "Understood, Lord Vader. Sector Gamma will be cleared and sealed." Vader gave a curt nod, a gesture that dismissed the officer and his staff with finality. They scattered, eager to escape the suffocating aura of darkness that clung to him like a second skin. Alone once more in the command center, Vader turned his thoughts inward, reaching out with the Force. He felt the station itself seem to hold its breath, its machinery humming a nervous tune beneath his scrutiny. He proceeded towards Sector Gamma, his stride purposeful, each step echoing with terrible finality. The corridors here were older, lined with reinforced blast doors and faded warning placards from the Republic era. Clone troopers stood guard at key junctions, their blasters held at the ready, their eyes scanning every shadow. They parted before him like the sea before a storm, their respect mingled with a primal fear they could not conceal. Vader ignored them, his focus absolute, his senses stretched ahead, probing the defenses of the archive vault. The entrance to Sector Gamma was a massive circular door, emblazoned with the long-forgotten crest of the Jedi Order. 2 clone troopers stood sentinel, their postures unnaturally stiff. "Lord Vader," one stammered, saluting sharply. "The sector is secure, no personnel present." Vader did not acknowledge them. He raised a gloved hand, the Force coiling around the ancient locking mechanism. With a groan of protesting metal and a shower of sparks, the massive door began to grind open, revealing the dimly lit cavern beyond. The air that billowed out was stale, thick with the scent of ozone, dust and something else, something ancient and cold. It was the scent of forgotten knowledge, of secrets, buried beneath layers of encryption and time. Vader stepped over the threshold, the door sealing shut behind him, with a final resonant boom that echoed in the sudden silence. He was alone in the heart of the Jedi's hidden sanctuary. The archive chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow high above. Rows upon rows of data towers stretched into the distance, their crystalline spires glowing with a soft internal blue light. Holocrons rested on pedestals, their intricate geometries shimmering with latent power. Terminals, long dormant, lined the walls, their screens dark and lifeless. The sheer weight of accumulated knowledge was palpable, a pressure in the Force that would have overwhelmed a lesser being. Vader moved deeper into the chamber, his boots silent on the polished floor. He ignored the holocrons, their light-side resonance a painful sting against his darkened senses. His goal was specific, the central data core, a monolithic structure pulsing with faint energy at the chamber's heart. As he approached, the core's surface shimmered, projecting a holographic interface, complex, layered, protected by algorithms designed to repel even the most skilled slicers. But Vader was no slicer. He was the Force incarnate, twisted and dark. He placed his hands upon the cool surface of the core, closing his eyes behind the mask. He reached out not with wires or code, but with the raw, untamed power of the dark side. It flowed through him, a torrent of shadow and will, seeking the cracks in the core's defenses, the weaknesses in its programming. The holographic interface flickered violently, warning symbols flashing red before dissolving into static. A low hum emanated from the core, building in pitch and intensity, a sound of protest against the violation. Then, with a final surge of power, Vader breached the innermost sanctum. The core's light shifted from blue to a deep, angry crimson. Data streams, vast and chaotic, flooded his mind's eye. Mission reports, personnel files, strategic analyses, historical records, philosophical treatises. He sifted through the torrent with ruthless efficiency, discarding the irrelevant, seeking only the names, the locations, the trails of those who had escaped Order 66. The names of survivors burned in his consciousness: Quinlan Vos, Kakruk, Rowan Shrine, each one a target, a loose thread to be snipped. And then, one name surfaced with particular clarity, resonating with a power that demanded attention. Kirak Infila. The data stream associated with him was heavily encrypted, marked with protocols Vader recognized instantly. The Barash Vow. A Jedi who had renounced all worldly connections to immerse himself solely in the Force, becoming a weapon of pure light and focus. A formidable opponent. A worthy challenge. Vader's grip on the data core tightened, the durasteel groaning under the pressure. Kirak Infila. The name echoed in the silence of the archive chamber, a promise of conflict to come. He extracted the relevant coordinates, the tactical assessments, the known patterns of the Jedi Master's movements. The core's crimson light pulsed once brightly, then faded back to its dormant blue as Vader withdrew his hands. The violation was complete. He turned from the core, his task accomplished, the location of his next prey locked in his mind. As he moved back toward the sealed entrance, the archive chamber seemed to sigh around him, the blue light of the data towers dimming slightly, as if mourning the theft of its secrets. The heavy door groaned open at his approach, revealing the anxious faces of the clone guards beyond. They snapped to attention, their eyes wide behind their visors, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, the dark energy that clung to him like a shroud. Vader strode past them without a word, his mind already racing ahead to the hunt. The databanks of Brighthome had yielded their treasure, their secrets now his to command. But among the names and locations, among the echoes of the fallen order, one name burned brighter than the rest. Kirak Infila, a Jedi Master who had embraced solitude and power. A Jedi Master who would soon learn the true meaning of fear. And as the station's corridors swallowed him once more, the Force itself seemed to tremble at the thought of their inevitable collision. The shuttle descended through Aldolim's atmosphere like a stone dropped into ink. Outside the viewport, the river moon unfurled in shades of bruised purple and sickly green, its surface choked with endless swamps and labyrinthine waterways. Acidic rain lashed against the transparent steel, hissing as it corroded the outer hull, each droplet a tiny, devouring mouth. Inside the cabin, the air was thick with the smell of ozone and recycled breath, a sterile tomb hurtling toward a living, breathing nightmare. Lord Vader sat immobile in the command chair, his black armor a void absorbing the dim emergency lighting, his respirator's rhythmic hiss, the only counterpoint to the storm's fury. The journey from Brighthome had been a silent passage through hyperspace, a limbo of cold stars and colder purpose. Now the transition to real space brought the tangible weight of the hunt. The Force here was different. Not the sterile hum of the space station or the oppressive darkness of Coruscant, but a primal, churning energy. It was the life force of the swamp itself, teeming, vibrant, and utterly alien. And at its heart, like a lodestone drawing iron, pulsed the presence of Kirak Infila. Vader closed his eyes behind the mask, focusing inward. He reached out, not with hands, but with the dark side, a tendril of shadow questing through the tempest. He felt the Jedi Master's light, pure, focused, serene, a beacon in the suffocating gloom. He was calm, centered, utterly detached from the physical world. The Barash Vow, an abandonment of all but the Force itself, a state of being that made Infila a weapon of terrifying purity. The shuttle bucked violently, caught in a sudden downdraft. Warning lights flashed crimson across the pilot's console. Turbulence exceeding safety thresholds. Lord Vader, the pilot reported, his voice tight with strain. Recommend ascending to stable altitude. Vader's gaze remained fixed on the churning landscape below. Proceed, he commanded, the word a blade of ice. The pilot swallowed hard, knuckles white on the controls. Yes, my lord. The shuttle plunged deeper, buffeted by winds that screamed like damned souls. Rain hammered the hull, a relentless, percussive assault. Vader felt the vibrations through the deck plates, each jolt a fresh wave of agony through his ruined frame. The suit compensated, dampening the worst, but the underlying pain was a constant companion, a reminder of the fire that forged him. He focused on the Jedi's signature, letting it guide him through the storm. Infilla was not hiding. He was waiting, meditating, preparing. The arrogance of it was staggering. To believe solitude and focus could shield him from the Emperor's wrath, from Darth Vader. The shuttle broke through the lowest cloud layer, revealing the swamp's true face. Towering, moss-draped trees clawed at the bruised sky, their roots submerged in murky, viscous water the color of old blood. Bioluminescent fungi clung to the trunks, casting an eerie, shifting glow that painted the landscape in shades of sickly green and phantom blue. The air, even filtered through the shuttle systems, smelled of decay, damp earth, and something acridly sweet, like rotting fruit. There, my lord, the pilot pointed, his finger trembling slightly. Ahead, rising from the swamp like a fossilized giant, stood a structure of weathered stone. It was a ziggurat, its steps slick with rain and slime, its peak lost in the low-hanging clouds. No lights burned, no movement stirred. Yet Vader felt the power emanating from it, a palpable pressure against his dark senses. Kirak Infilla was within. Land one click from the base, Vader ordered. Conceal the shuttle. The pilot nodded, guiding the craft toward a relatively clear patch of muddy ground between two massive buttress roots. The descent was rough, the shuttle sinking slightly into the soft earth with a wet, sucking sound. The engines whined down to silence, leaving only the drumming of the rain on the hull and the incessant hum of Vader's respirator. The ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss, releasing the swamp's oppressive atmosphere into the cabin. The air hit Vader's external senses like a physical blow, thick, humid, heavy, with moisture and the stench of organic decay. His environmental systems whirred loudly, struggling to filter the contaminants, to maintain the delicate balance that kept him alive. He stepped down the ramp, his heavy boots sinking ankle-deep into the sucking mud. The rain was colder here, more insistent. It streamed down his armor in rivulets, finding every seam, every joint. He felt it not as water, but as a constant, probing pressure, a reminder of the suit's imperfections. The pilot and two clone troopers followed him down, their armor already spattered with mud, their movements cautious in the treacherous footing. Secure the perimeter, Vader commanded without turning. No one enters or leaves without my order. Yes, Lord Vader. The clone sergeant saluted, his voice muffled by his helmet. They moved off, their blasters held ready, their eyes scanning the shadowed depths of the swamp. Vader ignored them, his entire being focused on the ziggurat looming ahead. He began to walk, each step a deliberate effort through the clinging mud. The swamp seemed to resist him, the very ground pulling at his feet, the thick air pressing against his chest plate. Bioluminescent insects swarmed in the air, their tiny lights flickering like dying stars. Unseen things moved in the murky water beneath the gnarled roots, large shapes displacing the fluid, leaving ripples that spread outward like dark thoughts. The sounds were a cacophony of life, the croaking of amphibians, the size of a man's torso, the chittering of unseen insects, the constant drip, drip, drip of water from leaves, and the low, guttural roar of some distant predator. Vader moved through it all like a shadow given form. The dark side swirled around him, a cloak of absolute silence and stillness that repelled the swamp's lesser creatures. Insects veered away. Amphibians fell silent. The larger disturbances in the water ceased. He was an intrusion, a hole torn in the fabric of this world, and the wilderness itself recoiled. As he drew closer to the ziggurat, the pressure of the Jedi's presence intensified. It was not hostile, not yet. It was aware, calm. Wait. Vader felt a flicker of something akin to respect, swiftly crushed beneath the weight of his purpose. This Jedi had chosen his death ground well. Isolation, focus, the power of the untamed force flowing around him. The base of the ziggurat was a sheer wall of slick, rain-slicked stone, carved with intricate weathered symbols Vader recognized as archaic Jedi hieroglyphs. Vines thick as a man's arm snaked up the surface, their leaves broad and waxy, shedding water in constant streams. There was no visible entrance, no door, no stairway leading up, just the monolithic structure, defying the swamp, radiating an ageless, silent power. Vader stopped before it, the rain drumming a relentless tattoo on his helmet. He reached out with the Force, not to attack, but to perceive. He felt the stone's density, its age, its resistance. He felt the life within the vines, the water flowing through them, the tiny creatures living in their bark. And he felt the barrier, a subtle, almost imperceptible field of energy woven into the very fabric of the ziggurat, a shield of pure light-side energy designed to repel the dark. A faint smile touched Vader's lips beneath the mask. A challenge. He raised both hands, palms facing the smooth stone. The dark side coalesced around him, a visible miasma of shadow and raw power that caused the raindrops to sizzle and evaporate before they touched him. He poured his will into the assault, his rage, his pain, his hatred for the light, for the Jedi, for the man he had been. The shield flared, a brilliant, blinding white light that momentarily illuminated the entire swamp, turning night into day. The vines shriveled and blackened where the dark energy touched them. The stone itself groaned, cracking under the immense pressure. Vader pushed harder, feeding the attack with the memory of Mustafar's fire, of Padme's death, of Obi-Wan's betrayal. With a sound like tearing fabric and shattering glass, the light shield shattered. A section of the ziggurat's base, roughly the size of a blast door, crumbled inward, revealing a dark, sloping tunnel beyond. Dust and debris billowed out, mixing with the rain. The sudden silence after the shield's destruction was profound, broken only by the hiss of Vader's respirator and the renewed drumming of the rain. He lowered his hands, the dark side aura receding, though the air still crackled with residual energy. The entrance gaped before him, a dark maw leading into the heart of the Jedi's sanctuary. The sense of Kirak Infila's presence was stronger now, no longer serene, but focused, alert, and waiting just beyond the threshold. The hunt was over. The confrontation was imminent. Vader took a step forward, his boot crushing the fallen stone beneath it. He entered the tunnel, the darkness swallowing him whole. The air inside was still, stale, and smelled of dust and ancient stone. The only light came from the faint glow of his own armor's emergency indicators and the dimming radiance of the swamp outside. The tunnel sloped downward, leading him deeper into the ziggurat, deeper into the Jedi's trap. As he moved, the silence of the tomb-like passage was broken by a new sound. Faint at first, then growing steadily louder. It was the sound of rushing water, a deep, resonant roar that vibrated through the stone walls, through the floor, through the very bones of the structure. Aldolim was a river moon, and Kirak Infila had chosen his fortress well. The tunnel ahead opened into a vast chamber, and the roar became a deafening crescendo. Vader emerged onto a wide stone balcony, overlooking a cavern of impossible scale. Far below, a subterranean river thundered past, its waters churning, white water rapids crashing against jagged rocks. The spray rose in a constant, soaking mist, coating everything in slick moisture. And there, Standing calmly on a narrow stone bridge spanning the raging torrent was Kirak Infila. He was tall, powerfully built, his simple robes whipping in the damp wind generated by the falls. His eyes were closed, his face serene, a picture of utter tranquility amidst the chaos. His lightsaber hung at his belt, a familiar cylinder of polished metal. He opened his eyes as Vader stepped onto the balcony, his gaze calm, assessing, devoid of fear. "Anakin Skywalker," he said, his voice clear and strong, easily carrying over the roar of the water. Vader stopped at the edge of the balcony, the mist swirling around his legs. "That name is dead," he stated, his voice a mechanical growl that somehow cut through the din. Kirak Infila nodded slowly, a gesture of profound sadness. "So it is," he agreed. "Yet the Force remembers. It remembers the light you carried. It remembers the promise you held." Vader's hand moved instinctively toward the hilt of his own unlit weapon. "The Force remembers only power," he countered. Kirak Infila sighed, a sound lost almost immediately in the roar of the river. "Then you have already lost, Darth Vader. For true power lies not in domination, but in harmony." He unclipped his lightsaber, but did not ignite it. "You have come seeking death, or perhaps seeking an end to your own suffering." Vader ignited his crimson blade, the snap hiss cutting through the chamber's noise like a knife. The red light cast long, dancing shadows across the wet stone, turning the mist into a bloody haze. "I have come for your crystal," Jedi Vader declared, his voice amplified by the suit's speakers, resonating with cold fury. "And your life." Kirak Infila finally ignited his own blade, the green light flaring to life, a stark contrast to Vader's crimson. The two colors clashed in the misty air, red against green, darkness against light. The Jedi Master settled into a defensive stance, his movements fluid, economical, utterly centered. "Then come, Lord Vader," he said, his voice calm, almost inviting. "Let the river be your judge." Vader advanced across the narrow stone bridge, the raging torrent below promising oblivion for any misstep. The duel was joined not with a clash of blades, but with a meeting of wills, a silent, titanic struggle played out on the precipice above the drowning waters. And as the shuttle's engines faded into the distance behind him, Vader knew there was no retreat. Only the storm, only the river, only the Jedi, and the cold, certain knowledge that one of them would not leave Aldolim alive. The Force itself held its breath, waiting for the first strike. The stone bridge vibrated beneath Vader's boots, the river's thunder a physical force pressing against his armor. Kirak Infila stood opposite, his green blade a steady beacon in the crimson gloom. The mist coiled around them like living serpents, cold and relentless. Vader advanced, each step measured, the crimson lightsaber held low and ready. The Jedi Master did not retreat, his stance rooted, his expression unchanging. The first clash was a shower of sparks, red against green, light against shadow. Infila moved like the river itself, fluid, adaptable, impossible to grasp. His blade wove a net of defense, each parry precise, each block effortless. Vader pressed forward, his strikes powerful but telegraphed, the suit's bulk betraying his intent. The Jedi flowed around him, his green light a constant, irritating presence. "You are strong, Skywalker," Infila said, his voice calm over the roar of the water. "But strength without grace is just violence." Vader snarled behind the mask, a sound swallowed by the respirator. He feinted left, then spun right, his blade arcing toward the Jedi's exposed flank. Infila pivoted, his green blade meeting crimson in a screech of energy. The bridge shuddered. A chunk of stone cracked loose, tumbling into the churning river below. Vader felt the vibration through his boots, a reminder of the precipice beneath them. He reached out with the Force, not to strike but to unmake. The ancient stone groaned, fissures, spider webbing across the bridge's surface. Infila's eyes widened slightly, the first crack in his serene facade. "You would bring the mountain down upon us both?" Vader did not answer. He poured his rage into the attack, the dark side, a tidal wave crashing against the Jedi's light. The bridge lurched violently. Another section collapsed into the torrent. In fear, leapt backward, landing lightly on the remaining span. "There is no honor in this, Vader." Vader advanced, the crumbling stone narrowing the battlefield. "Honor is a luxury for the living Jedi." He lunged, his blade a blur of crimson death. In fear, parried, but the force of the blow drove him back a step. The river roared below, hungry and relentless. Spray drenched them both, turning the stone slick and treacherous. Vader's boots slipped, the suit's weight working against him. Infilla saw the opening, his green blade flashing toward Vader's shoulder. Vader twisted, the blade grazing his pauldron, scorching the blackened steel. Pain lanced through him, sharp and familiar. Warning alarms blared in his helmet. He roared, the sound amplified by the suit's speakers echoing in the cavern. The dark side surged within him, a tempest answering the river's fury. He raised his free hand, not toward the Jedi, but toward the bridge itself. "Enough," Vader growled. The force coalesced around his fist, a palpable weight in the air. Infilla felt it, his eyes widening in sudden, stark fear. "No." Vader clenched his fist. The bridge exploded. Stone shattered like glass, consumed by the dark side's raw power. The section beneath Infilla's feet vanished entirely. The Jedi Master plummeted toward the churning river, his green blade extinguishing as he fell. Vader watched, unmoving, as the figure vanished into the white water. Silence descended, broken only by the river's endless roar. The mist swirled where the bridge had been, hiding the devastation. Vader stood alone on the remaining fragment of stone, the crimson blade casting long shadows across the wet rock. He deactivated the lightsaber, the sudden plunge into darkness absolute. He reached out with the Force, searching the churning waters below. He felt the Jedi's presence, faint, fading, extinguished like a candle in a hurricane. Kirik, Infilla, was gone, consumed by the river, consumed by the dark side. Vader turned, his boots scraping against the broken stone. He made his way back along the shattered ledge, each step deliberate, each movement a testament to his power. The climb back to the surface was arduous, the suit's systems straining against the exertion. But he did not falter. He did not rest. He emerged from the Ziggurats Moor back into the storm-lashed swamp. The rain had lessened to a drizzle, but the air was still thick with moisture and decay. The clone troopers snapped to attention as he approached, their relief palpable even through their helmets. "The target is neutralized," Vader stated, his voice flat. "Return to the shuttle." The ascent to orbit was silent, the weight of victory heavy in the cabin. Vader sat alone, his gaze fixed on the receding image of Aldalim. The river moon shone like a bruised jewel against the blackness of space. Kirak Infilla's light had been extinguished there, but something else had been taken. He reached into a compartment beside his chair, retrieving the object he'd claimed from the river's edge. Kirak Infilla's lightsaber. The hilt was cool in his grasp, its weight familiar yet alien. He held it up, turning it slowly in the dim light. The crystal within pulsed with faint residual energy. A Kyber crystal, pure, untainted, a vessel of light. And it was his. The shuttle jumped to hyperspace, the stars stretching into lines of light. Vader closed his eyes behind the mask, focusing on the crystal in his hand. He felt its light, its purity, its connection to the Jedi who had wielded it, and he felt his own darkness, a void waiting to consume it. The bleeding would require focus, pain, and a place of power. He knew where he must go. The fires of Mustafar awaited. The red blade pulsed in his mind, but its light refused to die. The shuttle descended through Mustafar's atmosphere like a stone cast into hell. Outside the viewport, rivers of molten rock carved glowing scars across the blackened landscape. Ash fell like gray snow, coating the durasteel hull in a fine, abrasive powder. The heat was palpable even through the shuttle's reinforced shielding, a suffocating pressure that made the very air shimmer. Lord Vader sat motionless in the command chair, the stolen Kyber crystal clutched in his black-gloved hand. The planet's gravity pulled the shuttle downward, toward the jagged peaks of a volcanic mountain range. Lava fountains erupted in the distance, spewing columns of molten rock, thousands of meters into the toxic sky. The scent of sulfur and burnt metals seeped into the cabin, thick and choking. Vader's environmental systems whirred loudly, struggling to filter the corrosive atmosphere. Each breath through the respirator was a conscious effort, a mechanical gasp in the oppressive heat. The pilot navigated toward a landing platform jutting from the mountainside, its structure half melted from constant exposure to the planet's fury. The shuttle settled onto the scorched metal with a groan of stressed alloys. The ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss, releasing a wave of blistering air that made the viewport ripple. Vader stood, the crystal held tightly in his grasp, its cool surface a stark contrast to the ambient heat. He stepped onto the platform, the soles of his boots sizzling against the superheated metal. Lava flows pulsed far below, casting the landscape in a hellish red glow. The wind howled, carrying clouds of ash that stung against his armor like tiny needles. Before him stood an ancient Sith altar, carved from black obsidian that seemed to drink the light. Its surface was etched with spiraling runes, symbols of power older than the Republic itself. Vader approached the altar, each step deliberate, the weight of his armor pressing him into the scorched ground. He placed the Kyber crystal at the altar's center, its clear facets catching the crimson light of the lava flows. The crystal pulsed faintly, a heartbeat of pure light in the gathering darkness. Vader closed his eyes behind the mask, reaching inward, summoning the pain, the rage, the grief that defined his existence. The dark side coalesced around him, a visible miasma of shadow that made the very air crackle. He focused on the memory of fire, Mustafar's lava consuming his flesh, Obi-Wan's blade severing his limbs. He poured his agony into the crystal, forcing his suffering into its pure heart. The crystal resisted, its light flaring brightly, pushing back against the darkness. Vader gritted his teeth, the vocoder emitting a low growl of frustration. He reached deeper, summoning the memory of Padme, her dying breath, her lying breath, her life slipping away despite his power to save her. The crystal's light flickered, dimming slightly under the weight of his despair. Vader pressed harder, channeling his hatred for the Jedi, for Obi-Wan, for himself. The dark side surged, a torrent of shadow and rage that battered against the crystal's defenses. Sweat beaded on Vader's brow beneath the mask, instantly evaporated by the ambient heat. His suit's cooling systems whined in protest, struggling to regulate his body temperature against the planet's inferno. Warning alarms blared in his helmet, alerting him to critical overheating. He ignored them, pouring every ounce of his will into the ritual. The crystal's light shifted, its clear hue darkening to a deep, angry amber. Vader raised his hands, palms hovering over the crystal. He summoned the memory of his mother, her death in his arms, his failure to protect her from the Tusken Raiders. The crystal's light dimmed further, its resistance crumbling under the onslaught of grief. He focused on the betrayal, the Jedi Council's distrust, Palpatine's manipulation, his own weakness. The dark side roared within him, a storm of pure malice that finally shattered the crystal's defenses. The crystal bled. Its light turned from amber to crimson, then to a deep bloody red that matched the lava flows below. A low hum emanated from the crystal, vibrating through the obsidian altar, through the ground, through Vader's own bones. He felt the crystal's transformation, its purity corrupted, its light consumed by darkness. It was his now. Vader opened his eyes, the crimson lenses reflecting the crystal's new glow. He reached out, his gloved fingers closing around the warm, pulsing crystal. The moment his flesh touched its surface, a surge of power shot through him, dark, violent, intoxicating. He felt the crystal's resonance, its hunger for destruction, its thirst for pain. It was a perfect match for the darkness within him. He raised the crystal to the light, watching as the red glow illuminated the ancient Sith runes on the altar. The symbols seemed to pulse in response, acknowledging the ritual's completion. Vader lowered the crystal, his mind already turning to its purpose, its place within a new lightsaber, a weapon worthy of his power. The wind howled around him, carrying ash and embers that danced in the crimson light. Lava fountains erupted in the distance, casting long, dancing shadows across the obsidian altar. Vader stood alone on the scorched platform, the bleeding crystal clutched in his hand, the dark side swirling around him like a living thing. The ritual was complete. The crystal was his, and with it, the last light of Anakin Skywalker was extinguished forever. The red blade cast no shadows, only a future written in blood. The crimson crystal pulsed in Vader's grasp like a stolen heart. Its warmth seeped through his black glove, a feverish heat that resonated with the molten rivers below. Mustafar's atmosphere pressed down, thick with sulfur and the metallic tang of vaporized rock. Ash coated his armor like a second skin, gray and suffocating. Each breath through the respirator was a labor, the filters straining against the planet's toxic breath. He descended the obsidian altar's steps, each footfall echoing like a hammer blow in the volcanic silence. The shuttle waited on the landing platform, its hull streaked with soot and heat scars. Vader boarded without a word, the crystal held tightly in his fist. The pilot kept his eyes fixed on the controls, radiating palpable fear. "Set course for Murkhana," Vader commanded, his voice a mechanical growl. The ascent through Mustafar's atmosphere was a violent shudder. Turbulence threw the shuttle like a toy, warning lights flashing crimson across the cockpit. Vader remained motionless, his focus entirely on the crystal's dark resonance. It hummed against his palm, a vibration that matched the rhythm of his own breathing. The dark side swirled around it, hungry and eager. Hippus swallowed the shuttle, the stars stretching into streaks of light. Vader closed his eyes behind the mask, reaching out with the Force. He felt the crystal's transformation, its light utterly consumed, its essence reforged in pain. It was no longer a Jedi's tool. It was a Sith's weapon. Murkhana materialized on the view screen, a world perpetually drowning. Acidic rain lashed the shuttle's viewport, streaking the transperisteel like tears of poison. Below, endless swamps and decaying separatist facilities stretched toward a bruised horizon. Intelligence reports indicated Jedi survivors had established a hidden enclave here, using the planet's toxic environment as a shield. Perfect hunting grounds. The shuttle descended through the storm, buffeted by winds that howled like damned souls. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the ruins of a droid factory half swallowed by the swamp. Vader felt the Jedi's presence, a cluster of light side signatures huddled deep within the decaying complex. Fear, desperation. Land near the eastern access tunnel, Vader ordered. The pilot nodded, guiding the shuttle toward a relatively clear patch of muddy ground. The ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss, releasing the swamp's stench into the cabin. The air was thick with the smell of decay, ozone, and something acridly sweet, like rotting metal. Vader stepped out, the acid rain sizzling against his armor. Clone troopers of the 51st to find him, their white armor already stained by the downpour. "Secure the perimeter," Vader commanded. "No one enters or leaves." The clones moved out, their blasters held ready, their movements precise despite the treacherous footing. Vader turned toward the ruined factory, its skeletal frame looming like a giant's corpse. He moved through the swamp with unnatural silence, the dark side coiling around him like a cloak. The acid rain pooled in his armor's joints, the suit's seals whining in protest. Warning alarms blared in his helmet, alerting him to corrosive damage. He ignored them, his focus absolute. The crystal pulsed in his hand, eager for blood. The factory's entrance was a gaping maw, twisted metal framing a tunnel choked with debris. and toxic sludge. Vader raised his hand, the force surging forth. Debris scattered like leaves before a hurricane, clearing a path into the darkness. He stepped inside, the clones following cautiously behind him. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of rust and long-dead machinery. Deeper within the complex, the Jedi had fortified themselves. Barricades made of durasteel plating and fallen machinery blocked the corridors. Blaster fire erupted as Vader rounded a corner, bolts ricocheting off his armor with sharp cracks. He raised the crystal, focusing its dark energy. A wave of pure malice shot forth, shattering the barricade and throwing the defenders back like ragdolls. The clones surged forward, their blasters ending the lives of the stunned survivors. Vader advanced, his stride purposeful, the crystal's hum growing louder. He felt the Jedi Masters deeper within the complex, Rowan Shrine, Bolch Attack, and a young Padawan named Oli Starstone. Their fear was a tangible thing, a sweet scent on the dark side's current. He found them in the factory's central control room, a vast chamber filled with shattered view screens and sparking consoles. Rowan Shrine stood before him, his blue lightsaber ignited, his face grim but determined. Bul Chatak guarded the Padawan, her green blade held in a defensive stance. "Anakin," Shrine said, his voice heavy with sorrow. Vader ignited the crimson blade. The snap hiss echoed through the chamber, a sound of pure menace. The red light cast long, dancing shadows across the ruined machinery. "That name is dead, Jedi," Vader stated, his voice amplified by the suit's speakers. Shrine sighed, a sound of profound resignation. The duel was brutal and swift. Vader's crimson blade was a blur of death, each strike fueled by the crystal's dark power. Shrine fought with the desperation of a cornered animal, his blue blade clashing against crimson in showers of spark. Bul Chatak joined the fray, her green blade flashing as she sought an opening. Vader parried Shrine's thrust, then spun, his blade severing Chatak's arm at the elbow. She screamed, her green blade extinguishing as she crumpled to the deck. Shrine roared in fury, his attacks becoming wild, reckless. Vader disarmed him with a vicious twist of his wrist, sending the blue lightsaber skittering across the floor. He raised his hand, the force wrapping around Shrine's throat. The Jedi Master gasped, his face turning purple as he struggled against the invisible grip. Vader tightened his hold, feeling the life force draining from his victim. Shrine's eyes rolled back in his head as he lost consciousness. Vader released his hold, letting the body crumple to the deck. The Padawan, Oli Starstone, stood trembling, her unlit lightsaber clutched in her hands. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the grime and sweat. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackling consoles. Vader raised his crimson blade, the red light reflecting in her wide, terrified eyes. The blade descended in a swift, merciless arc. The Padawan's life ended instantly, her body collapsing beside Shrine's. Vader deactivated the lightsaber, the sudden plunge into darkness. The only light came from the sparking consoles and the faint glow of his armor's emergency indicators. He stood alone in the ruined control room, the scent of ozone and death thick in the air. The crystal in his lightsaber pulsed with satisfaction, feeding on the violence. The clones entered cautiously, their blasters held ready. "The targets are neutralized," Vader stated, his voice flat. "Secure the facility. Secure the facility." The ascent to orbit was silent, the weight of victory heavy in the cabin. Vader sat alone, his gaze fixed on the receding image of Murkhana. The acid rain still lashed the planet's surface, washing away the blood, but not the memory. The red blade hummed at his side, a constant reminder of his power. But as the shuttle jumped to hyperspace, Vader felt a strange sensation. A flicker of something beyond the dark side's satisfaction. A ghost of regret. A whisper of the man he once was. He crushed the feeling beneath a wave of dark power. There was no room for weakness, no room for the past. Only the present mattered. only the Empire, only the hunt. As the stars stretched into lines of light, Vader's comms crackled to life. Sidious's voice slithered into his audio receptors, smooth as oiled darkness. "Report, Lord Vader." Vader bowed his head, the movement stiff and mechanical. "The Jedi survivors on Murkhana have been eliminated, Master." "Excellent," Sidious replied, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "Your new weapon serves you well." Vader's gloved hand rested on the lightsaber's hilt. "The crystal is strong, Master. It thirsts for more." "Good," Sidious purred. "Return to Coruscant. There is another task that requires your unique talents." Vader nodded slowly, his mind already turning to the next mission. The galaxy would learn to fear the Red Blade. But as the shuttle raced through hyperspace, Vader couldn't shake the feeling that the crystal was changing him. Its dark resonance was growing stronger, its influence more pervasive. It was a weapon of immense power, but it was also a key to unlocking the darkest parts of his soul. And as the stars blurred past, Vader wondered what else lay hidden in the shadows of his heart. The shuttle descended through Coruscant's perpetual twilight, the planet's cityscape a glittering tapestry of light and shadow. Below, the Jedi Temple stood as a dark silhouette against the skyline, its spires broken, its light extinguished. Lord Vader stood at the viewport, his reflection a black void against the swirling clouds. The red lightsaber at his side pulsed with dark energy, a constant reminder of Murkhana's violence. The shuttle banked toward the Imperial Palace, its towers piercing the smog-choked atmosphere like needles. The landing bay was a cavern of polished durasteel, bathed in the cold glow of overhead lights. Imperial officers snapped to attention as Vader descended the ramp, their faces pale behind their formal masks. He moved through their ranks like a force of nature, his presence silencing the bustling activity. The palace corridors were endless, their walls lined with holographic displays of Imperial conquests. Vader ignored them, his focus absolute, his mind already turning to the task ahead. Darth Sidious awaited him in the throne room, seated upon a throne carved from black obsidian. The Emperor's yellow eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction as Vader approached. "The Jedi survivors on Murkhana have been eliminated, Master," Vader reported, his voice a mechanical growl. Sidious nodded slowly, his fingers steepled before him. "Your efficiency is commendable, Lord Vader. The red blade serves its purpose," Vader replied, his gloved hand resting on the lightsaber's hilt. Sidious smiled, a thin, cruel stretching of lips. "Indeed, but there are other threats to the Empire's stability. Scattered Jedi, Force-sensitive children, dissidents who would see the new order fall." Vader remained silent, his respirators hiss filling the space between them. Sidious gestured toward a holographic display that materialized beside the throne. It showed a group of hooded figures kneeling before the Emperor's image, their faces hidden in shadow. "These are the Inquisitorius," Sidious explained, his voice smooth as silk. "Dark side acolytes, Jedi hunters. Your hunters, Lord Vader." Vader studied the hologram, his gaze lingering on the figure at the forefront. This one was taller than the others, his posture radiating authority and ambition. "They are untested," Vader stated, his voice flat. Sidious nodded, his eyes gleaming with predatory intelligence. "They are yours to test, to train, to command." The Emperor rose from his throne, his robes swirling around him like a shroud. "The Inquisitorius will be the Empire's blade against the Jedi remnant. You will be their hammer, their master, their executioner." Vader bowed his head, the movement stiff and mechanical. "As you command, Master." The training facility was buried deep within the palace's sublevels, its corridors sterile and white. The air hummed with the energy of the dark side, a palpable pressure that made the very walls vibrate. The Inquisitors stood at attention in the central chamber, their hooded robes hiding their faces, their bodies rigid with anticipation. Vader entered, his black armor a stark contrast to the room's clinical brightness. The Inquisitors parted before him, their movements synchronized, their fear palpable. Vader stopped before the Grand Inquisitor, the tallest among them, his presence radiating confidence and power. "You were once a Jedi temple guard," Vader stated, his voice amplified by the suit's speakers. The Grand Inquisitor lowered his hood, revealing a face marked by pale skin and piercing yellow eyes. "I serve the Order," the Grand Inquisitor replied, his voice smooth and confident. "Now I serve the Empire." Vader's gaze swept across the assembled Inquisitors, his presence causing them to shift uncomfortably. "The Jedi are weak," he declared. "Their light is a flickering candle in the coming storm." The Grand Inquisitor smiled, a thin, cruel stretching of lips. "The dark side is stronger, Lord Vader. More efficient, more decisive." Vader ignited his crimson blade, the snap hiss echoing in the sterile chamber. The red light cast long, dancing shadows across the Inquisitors' hooded faces. "Prove it," Vader commanded. The Grand Inquisitor ignited his own lightsaber, a double-bladed weapon that hummed with dark energy. The duel was brief and brutal, a whirlwind of crimson and red light. The Grand Inquisitor was skilled, his movements fluid and precise, but he was no match for Vader's raw power and tactical brilliance. Within moments, Vader disarmed him, the Grand Inquisitor's lightsaber clattering to the floor. Vader raised his blade, the red light reflecting in the Grand Inquisitor's wide, terrified eyes. "Mercy is a weakness," Vader stated coldly. "Son," the Grand Inquisitor bowed his head, his body trembling with suppressed rage. "Your point is made, Lord Vader," he said, his voice tight with humiliation. Vader deactivated his blade, the sudden plunge into darkness, absolute. The Inquisitorius will hunt the Jedi survivors. They will capture Force-sensitive children. They will eliminate all who oppose the Empire. The Grand Inquisitor nodded slowly, his yellow eyes gleaming with renewed ambition. "We will not fail you, Lord Vader." Vader turned his attention to the other Inquisitors, their hooded faces turned toward him in silent reverence. "Your first mission awaits," he announced. "A Jedi Master has been located on the planet Trandosha. He is hiding among the Wookiee slave camps. You will capture him alive. Bring him to me." The Inquisitors bowed as one, their movements synchronized, their fear replaced by determination. Vader watched them depart, their hooded robes flowing behind them like shadows given form. The training facility's doors sealed shut behind them, leaving Vader alone in the sterile chamber. The red lightsaber hummed at his side, a constant reminder of his power. The Inquisitorius was his now, his weapon, his legacy. But as he stood alone in the silent chamber, Vader felt a flicker of something beyond the dark side's satisfaction, a sense of unease. The Grand Inquisitor's ambition was a palpable thing, a spark that could ignite into rebellion. Vader clenched his fist, the cybernetic fingers grinding together. The Inquisitors would serve the Empire. They would serve him, or they would be destroyed. There was no middle ground, no room for weakness. As he turned to leave, Vader's gaze drifted to the chamber's meditation alcoves. There, in the deepest shadows, a child's Force signature flickered. Young, terrified, powerful, the Grand Inquisitor had brought him here, a gift for his new master. Vader approached the alcove, his heavy boots echoing in the silent chamber. The child cowered in the corner, his eyes wide with fear, his small hands clenched into fists. "Please," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Vader raised his hand, the Force coiling around the child like a serpent. The child's eyes rolled back in his head as he lost consciousness. Vader caught him before he could fall, his gloved hands cradling the small body with surprising gentleness. The child's power was undeniable, a bright spark in the surrounding darkness, a spark that would be extinguished, or forged into something new. Vader carried the child from the meditation alcove, his stride purposeful. The Inquisitorius awaited his command. The galaxy awaited his judgment. and the dark side whispered of greater power to come. But as he walked through the sterile corridors, Vader couldn't shake the feeling that a rival lurked in the Inquisitor's midst, one who would challenge his throne. The ruins of the Jedi Temple stood like a corpse against Coruscant's skyline, its once proud spires now jagged teeth biting at the smog-choked sky. Lord Vader moved through its shattered halls, his armored boots crunching over broken glass and scorched debris. The air hung thick with the ghosts of the past, a palpable weight of betrayal and slaughter. Dust motes danced in the weak light filtering through cracked domes, each particle a tiny tomb. The Grand Inquisitor followed 2 paces behind, his hood drawn low, his double-bladed lightsaber humming at his belt. Sidious had commanded this test, a trial by fire in the heart of the Jedi's fallen sanctuary. "Prove your dominance," the Emperor had hissed, his voice like venom in Vader's mind. "Or prove your dominance," the Emperor had hissed, his voice like venom in Vader's mind. "Or prove yourself unworthy." Vader had not spoken in reply. His presence alone was answer enough. They entered the Hall of Knighthood, its vast chamber now a graveyard of broken statues and shattered holocrons. Moonlight streamed through the collapsed roof, casting long, skeletal shadows across the cracked marble floor. The Grand Inquisitor stopped, his hand resting on his lightsaber hilt. "Why here, Lord Vader?" he asked, his voice smooth, almost insolent. "This place reeks of failure." Vader turned slowly, the respirator's hiss echoing in the cavernous silence. "It reeks of power," he corrected, his voice a low growl that vibrated through the stone. "Power you seek to claim." The Grand Inquisitor lowered his hood, revealing pale skin and piercing yellow eyes that burned with ambition. "I serve the Empire. I serve you." Vader ignited his crimson blade. The snap hiss was a gunshot in the tomb-like silence. Red light flooded the hall, turning the broken statues into monstrous caricatures. "Then prove it," Vader commanded, raising the blade. Hand. The Grand Inquisitor ignited his own weapon, the twin crimson blades flaring to life with a menacing hum. The duel began not with a clash, but with a dance. The Grand Inquisitor moved like a viper, his double-bladed lightsaber weaving complex patterns in the air. He was fast, precise, his footwork flawless. Vader stood his ground, his own blade held low and ready, a statue of obsidian menace. The Grand Inquisitor feinted left, then spun right, his blade arcing toward Vader's exposed flank. Vader parried effortlessly, the crimson blades meeting in a shower of sparks. The force of the blow drove the Grand Inquisitor back a step. His eyes widened slightly, the first crack in his arrogant facade. "You are strong," he conceded, circling warily. "But strength without vision is just brutality." Vader advanced, each step deliberate, the stone floor trembling beneath his weight. "The dark side needs no vision," he stated, his voice amplified by the suit's speakers. "It needs only will." He lunged, his blade a blur of crimson death. The Grand Inquisitor parried, then countered, his twin blades flashing in a deadly arc. Vader twisted, the blade grazing his shoulder pauldron, scorching the blackened durasteel. Pain lanced through him, sharp and familiar. Warning alarms blared in his helmet. The Grand Inquisitor smiled, a thin, cruel stretching of lips. "The suit slows you," he taunted, pressing his advantage. Vader roared, the sound amplified into a deafening boom that shook dust from the ceiling. He reached out with the Force, not to strike, but to unmake. A massive stone statue of a long-dead Jedi Master tore free from its pedestal. It hovered for a heartbeat, then hurtled toward the Grand Inquisitor like a meteor. The Grand Inquisitor leapt aside, the statue shattering against the far wall in an explosion of marble and dust. Vader seized the moment, his blade flashing in a vicious downward strike. The Grand Inquisitor raised his lightsaber to block, but Vader's power was overwhelming. The double-bladed weapon wrenched from his grasp, clattering across the floor. Vader raised his blade, the red light reflecting in the Grand Inquisitor's wide, terrified eyes. "Mercy is a Jedi weakness," Vader stated coldly. The Grand Inquisitor fell to his knees, his body trembling with suppressed rage and fear. "I yield, Lord Vader," he gasped, his voice tight with humiliation. Vader deactivated his blade, the sudden plunge into darkness, absolute. The only light came from the moonlight, streaming through the broken roof. "Yielding is not enough," Vader declared, his voice flat. "You will serve, or you will be replaced." The Grand Inquisitor bowed his head, his knuckles white where they gripped his knees. "I understand, Lord Vader." Vader turned, his back to the defeated Inquisitor, his gaze sweeping across the ruined hall. The ghosts of the Jedi seemed to whisper in the silence, their presence a cold weight against his dark senses. A flicker of movement caught his eye. High above, in the shadowed recesses of the collapsed dome, a figure watched. Sidious. The Emperor's presence was a cold, calculating weight in the Force. His satisfaction a palpable thing. He had witnessed the duel. He had judged. Vader turned back to the Grand Inquisitor, who was slowly rising to his feet. "The Inquisitorius will hunt the Jedi survivors," Vader commanded. "They will capture Force-sensitive children. They will eliminate all who oppose the Empire." The Grand Inquisitor nodded, his yellow eyes gleaming with renewed ambition. "We will not fail you, Lord Vader." Vader strode past him, his boots crunching over broken marble. The Grand Inquisitor retrieved his lightsaber, his movements stiff with resentment. Together they walked through the ruined temple, their footsteps echoing in the vast, silent chambers. As they approached the exit, Vader's gaze drifted toward the temple's meditation chambers. There, in the deepest shadows, a child's Force signature flickered. Young, terrified, powerful, the Grand Inquisitor had brought him here, a gift for his new master. Vader stopped, his attention fixed on the hidden alcove. The Grand Inquisitor followed his gaze, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "A potential acolyte, Lord Vader," he explained quickly. "Found in the lower levels, hiding since Order 6. Vader approached the alcove, his heavy boots echoing in the silent corridor. The child cowered in the corner, his eyes wide with fear, his small hands clenched into fists. "Please," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Vader raised his hand, the Force coiling around the child like a serpent. The child's eyes rolled back in his head as he lost consciousness. Vader caught him before he could fall, his gloved hands cradling the small body with surprising gentleness. The child's power was undeniable, a bright spark in the surrounding darkness, a spark that would be extinguished, or forged into something new. As Vader carried the child from the meditation alcove, the Grand Inquisitor watched, his expression unreadable. The temple's ruins seemed to sigh around them, the ghosts of the Jedi mourning the loss of another innocent. But Vader felt only the dark side satisfaction. The test was complete. The Inquisitorius was his. And the child? The child was a question mark, a potential threat, or a potential weapon. As Vader walked through the temple's shattered halls, the child's small form limp in his arms, he wondered what Sidious would command, and what the dark side would demand. The mask of Darth Vader became more than armor. It became the face of the Empire's wrath. Across the galaxy, its image spread like a plague, etched into propaganda hollows and whispered in terrified alleys. The angular obsidian visage, the hollow eyes, the permanent grimace, these features haunted the dreams of billions. On Coruscant, children scurried indoors at the sound of approaching TIE fighters, fearing the black-clad giant might descend. On outer rim worlds like Subterral, miners refused to work night shifts, claiming the mask's reflection glowed in the deep shafts. The respirator's rhythmic hiss became a symphony of doom. Rebel cells on Ryloth abandoned their bases after hearing distorted recordings of that sound over compromised comm channels. On Corellia, a smuggler turned himself in to Imperial authorities, babbling about a breathing shadow that had boarded his ship unseen. The legend grew with each retelling, each exaggeration, each fresh atrocity attributed to Vader's name. Systems that had resisted Imperial occupation now surrendered without firing a shot, their governors pleading for mercy before the mask even appeared. Sidious watched this fear bloom with cold satisfaction. In the Imperial Palace's throne room, he studied holographic reports of planetary submissions, his yellow eyes gleaming. "Terror is a weapon more potent than any fleet," he murmured to Vader, who stood motionless beside the obsidian throne. "Your mask has become the Empire's true face." But Vader remained silent, the lenses of his mask reflecting the holographic light like twin crimson suns. But beneath the legend, the mask was a prison. On the Devastator's bridge, Vader caught his reflection in a viewport and saw not a Sith Lord, but a cage. The polished durasteel showed a distorted version of the man he'd been: broad shoulders, sharp features, all buried beneath machinery. He raised a gloved hand, touching the cold cheek plate, feeling the vibration of the respirator through his fingertips. This shell sustained him, yet it also buried Anakin Skywalker deeper than any grave. The weight of the mask pressed constantly, both physical and psychological. During a campaign on the spice moon of Kessel, Vader stood for hours in the scorching sun, the mask's internal temperature regulators whining in protest. Sweat beaded on his brow beneath the helmet, instantly evaporated by the suit's systems, leaving his skin dry and cracked. Stormtroopers whispered among themselves, marveling at their commander's endurance. Unaware of the agony radiating through his cybernetic limbs, the mask concealed his pain, transforming suffering into an aura of invincibility. Propaganda artists on Coruscant sculpted statues of Vader, capturing the mask's terrifying silhouette in black marble. These monuments rose in plazas across the capital, their polished surfaces reflecting the fearful faces of passers-by. Children were taught to recite the mask's symbolism in Imperial academies: strength through fear, order through control, peace through submission. On Lothal, a farmer carved a crude replica of the mask from wood and hung it above his door, hoping to ward off Imperial patrols. The gesture worked. Patrols avoided his farm, mistaking the display for loyalty. The mask's influence extended beyond fear into the realm of myth. On the Wookiee homeworld of Kashyyyk, elders told stories of a breathing demon who could command the shadows themselves. In the undercity of Nar Shaddaa, a cult emerged that worshipped the mask as an idol, painting its image on walls in glowing pigments. Vader learned of this cult through Imperial intelligence reports and felt a strange mix of revulsion and dark pride. Sidious, however, saw only opportunity. "Even their blasphemy serves us," he declared, gesturing at the holographic images of the shrine. Vader tested the mask's power firsthand on the ghoul-infested moon of Dexun. Leading a squad of stormtroopers through the jungle, he remained silent while his soldiers trembled at every rustle in the undergrowth. When a pack of cannibalistic ghoul cats attacked, Vader stood motionless as the creatures circled, their glowing eyes fixed on his mask. One by one, they backed away, whimpering, as if recognizing a greater predator. The stormtroopers stared in awe, their fear replaced by fanatical devotion. "We'd follow you to hell, Lord Vader," their sergeant whispered, voice thick with reverence. But hell was coming. On Coruscant, Vader stood before the Emperor in the throne room, the mask's lenses reflecting Sidious's yellow gaze. "The legend grows," Sidious purred, steepling his fingers. "But legends require maintenance, reminders of their power." Vader understood immediately. The mask alone was not enough. It needed blood to sustain its terror. The next morning, the HoloNet broadcast images from the Ghent system. An entire city block smoldered, reduced to rubble and ash. At the center of the devastation stood a single figure in black armor, untouched by the flames. The caption read, "Justice for the Rebellion." Across the galaxy, viewers recoiled from the sight. The mask's silhouette burned into their retinas. On Alderaan, Senator Organa quietly increased funding for rebel cells, his face grim as he studied the broadcast. In the Devastator's meditation chamber, Vader removed the mask for the first time in weeks. The hiss of releasing seals echoed in the sterile room, followed by the raw, ragged sound of his own breathing. The air felt cold against his scarred face, a rare moment of vulnerability. He studied his reflection in a polished bulkhead, pale skin stretched over a skull, eyes sunken and haunted. The man in the mirror was a stranger, a ghost wearing Vader's flesh. False. He replaced the mask with deliberate slowness, the seals re-engaging with a series of clicks. The respirator's rhythm resumed, steady and artificial. The reflection transformed instantly. The monster returned. The ghost vanished. Vader turned from the bulkhead, his gaze falling on the small, force-sensitive child seated quietly in the corner. The boy watched him with wide, unblinking eyes, too young to understand the mask's significance but old enough to feel its darkness. As Vader walked through the Devastator's corridors, stormtroopers snapped to attention, their helmets bowed in respect. In the mess hall, conversations died as he passed, replaced by the sound of respirators and shuffling boots. The mask's legend had permeated even the Imperial ranks, transforming fear into loyalty. But as Vader entered his private quarters, the doors sealing behind him with a hydraulic hiss, he felt the weight of that legend pressing down. The mask was his power, his prison, his identity. And in the mirror of polished obsidian beside his bed, Vader saw only the mask. But the galaxy saw the end of hope. The meditation chamber aboard the Devastator was a tomb of silence, its walls lined with obsidian panels that drank all light. Lord Vader sat motionless on a cold stone floor, his armor stripped away to reveal the scarred ruin beneath. The air tasted of antiseptic and ozone recycled endlessly through hidden vents. Without the mask, each breath was a ragged struggle, a wet, sucking sound that echoed in the sterile void. His eyes were closed, but behind the scarred lids, nightmares burned like lava. Mustafar's rivers of fire consumed him again. He felt the searing agony as Obi-Wan's blade severed his legs, the unbearable heat melting flesh from bone. He smelled his own burning tissue, a stench of cooked meat and vaporized cybernetics. Padme's screams tore through the inferno, her voice raw with betrayal. "You're breaking my heart." The words echoed louder than the flames, a wound deeper than any physical injury. He woke with a gasp, the sound ragged and human in the chamber's stillness. Sweat beaded on his scarred forehead, instantly chilled by the recycled air. The medical droid beside him whirred softly, its optical sensors scanning his vital signs. Cardiac rhythm elevated, Lord Vader, it droned. "Recommend sedative administration." Vader waved a trembling hand, dismissing the droid with a gesture. The nightmares were growing worse. Each meditation session dragged him deeper into the past. He saw Shmi Skywalker dying in his arms on Tatooine, her blood staining his hands. He watched the younglings in the Jedi temple cower before his blade, their eyes wide with terror. Padme's face haunted him, most pale in death, her beauty preserved even as life fled. "Anakin, you're going down a path I cannot follow." He reached for the mask, his fingers trembling as they closed around the cold durasteel. The seals hissed as he locked it in place, the respirator's rhythm immediately calming his ragged breathing. The black lenses reflected the chamber's dim lighting, hiding the anguish in his eyes. The armor was his shield, his prison, his only defense against the ghosts. But the ghosts were persistent. During a briefing aboard the interrogator, Vader saw Obi-Wan's reflection in a viewport, his former master's face etched with sorrow. He blinked, and the vision vanished, leaving only the starfield beyond. The clone commander presenting the tactical report paused, sensing his lord's distraction. "Is something wrong, Lord Vader?" Vader's gloved fist clenched, crushing the datapad in his grip. Sidious felt these lapses through their force bond. A holographic transmission crackled to life in Vader's quarters, the Emperor's face twisted with displeasure. "Your focus wavers, apprentice," Sidious hissed, his voice like grinding glass. "The past is a weakness to be purged, not indulged." Vader bowed his head, the movement stiff and mechanical. "I understand, Master." The Emperor's tests grew more cruel. On the frozen world of Elim, Vader stood before a cave entrance, its walls glittering with unclaimed Kyber crystals. Sidious's voice echoed in his mind. Retrieve a crystal without bleeding it. Prove you control the darkness, not the other way around. Vader reached out with the Force, his touch gentle as he plucked a crystal from the ice. For a moment it glowed with pure white light. Then Padmé's face flashed in his mind, her smile, her laughter, her dying breath. Rage surged through him, and the crystal shattered in his grasp, its fragments turning black. Sidious's laughter echoed in the Force, cold and mocking. Failure, Lord Vader. The darkness still owns you. The breaking point came on Coruscant, in the lower levels where the Jedi had hidden their younglings. Vader led a squad of clone troopers into a crumbling nursery, its walls painted with fading murals of starships and happy children. A small boy cowered behind a toy box, his Force signature bright with terror. "Please don't hurt me," he whispered, tears streaking his dusty cheeks. Vader raised his hand, the Force coiling around the child like a serpent. The boy's eyes widened, expecting death. But Vader hesitated. For a fraction of a second, Anakin Skywalker surfaced. Memories of his own childhood as a slave, of his mother's love, of Padmé's gentle touch. The dark side roared in protest, a tidal wave of fury threatening to drown him. The child's lightsaber ignited, a training saber, its blade weak and yellow. "I won't let you hurt anyone else," the boy shouted, charging with desperate courage. Vader's hand trembled as he raised his own blade, the red light casting long shadows across the nursery. The dark side screamed for blood, for obedience, for the death of all weakness. With a roar of anguish, Vader struck. The crimson blade cut through the training saber like paper, ending the child's life in an instant. The small body crumpled to the floor, the yellow blade extinguishing. Vader stood over the corpse, his breathing ragged even through the respirator. The clone troopers remained silent, their fear palpable. In the silence, a new presence stirred in the Force. Not a ghost, not a memory, but something else. A whisper of light, a flicker of compassion, buried beneath layers of darkness and pain. Vader crushed it beneath a wave of dark power, but the damage was done. The dark side had felt his moment of weakness, and it demanded penance. As Vader walked through the ruined nursery, his boots crunching over broken toys, he felt the suit's systems straining. Warning alarms blared in his helmet, alerting him to rising internal temperatures and fluctuating life support readings. The physical toll of suppressing Anakin Skywalker was becoming too great. The mask's lenses reflected the child's still form, a tiny mirror of his own lost humanity. Vader turned away, his stride heavy with the weight of atrocity. The dark side roared within him, a beast demanding more blood, more pain, more death to bury the ghost that refused to die. But somewhere in the depths of his soul, a part of him wept for the boy. And the dark side roared in betrayal. The Bacta tank's viscous fluid embraced Vader like a second womb, its gelid glow casting eerie reflections across the chamber's sterile walls. His ruined body floated suspended, cybernetic limbs motionless, scarred tissue knitting slowly under the tank's rejuvenating light. The medical droids moved with silent precision, their manipulators adjusting nutrient feeds and monitoring readouts with cold efficiency. Outside the transparestial viewport, the Devastator's bridge crew worked in hushed tones, their eyes averted from their commander's vulnerable state. Vulnerability, a luxury Vader could ill afford. Felucia's jungles had nearly claimed him. The mission had been routine, purge a separatist holdout harboring Jedi sympathizers. But the planet's flora fought back with vicious intelligence. A spore-laden vine, coiled like a serpent, had struck his neck plate, injecting neurotoxin that bypassed the suit's filters. Alarms had screamed in his helmet as his systems failed, vision blurring, limbs seizing. Only the 501st's rapid extraction saved him from the jungle's hungry maw. Now submerged in healing fluid, Vader replayed the failure. The suit's filtration matrix had been compromised, a design flaw Sidious had insisted upon. Weaknesses ensure obedience, the Emperor's voice echoed in his memory. Vader's fist clenched beneath the Bacta, the movement sluggish, resisted by the thick fluid. The droids noted the spike in vitals, adjusting sedative levels without comment. The chamber doors hissed open. Sidious entered, his black robe swallowing the light, his presence a cold weight pressing against the tank. "The suit protects you, Lord Vader," he murmured, his voice amplified through the fluid. "But it also binds you, a reminder that your power flows through me." Vader remained motionless, his gaze fixed on the Emperor's distorted form through the fluid and glass. Sidious circled the tank, like a shark scenting blood. The Felucia toxin was instructive. "Your armor requires reinforcement. Lightning-resistant plating, perhaps." A lesson from Murkhana's near failure. Vader's mind flashed back, blaster bolts scorching his shoulder, slavers laughing, the suit's alarms blaring. Weaknesses, deliberate, cruel. A medical droid approached hesitantly, holding a datapad. "My lord," it droned, "the life support recalibration is complete, per your master's specifications." Vader's respirator hitched a glitch in the fluid's interface. "Recalibrate." Sidious had ordered his life support tuned to fail at critical moments. A leash around his throat, the Bacta drained with a gurgling sigh, leaving Vader exposed on the regeneration slab. Cold air hit his scarred flesh, a shock after the tank's warmth. Droids moved swiftly, sealing him back into the armor with practiced efficiency. Each plate locked into place with a hydraulic hiss, the respirator resuming its rhythm, steady, artificial, inescapable. The prison reformed around him. Sidious watched, satisfaction radiating from him like heat. "Rise, Lord Vader. The galaxy awaits its monster." Vader obeyed, the suit's servos whining under his weight. He stood before his master, the black armor gleaming under the chamber's lights, a monument to pain and power. "Your next mission awaits on Kashyyyk," Sidious continued. "A Jedi enclave. Make an example." As Vader marched through the Devastator's corridors, stormtroopers snapped to attention, their fear a tangible thing. None saw the tremor in his left hand, hidden within the black gauntlet, a remnant of the toxin, a reminder of mortality. The suit's new lightning-resistant plating felt heavier, more restrictive. Sidious's gift was another chain. In his quarters, Vader removed the helmet, the seals releasing with a sigh. He studied his reflection in the polished obsidian wall, pale skin stretched over bone, eyes hollow, the scar tissue a roadmap of failure. The suit sustained him, yes, but it also ensured he could never rise against his master, never be free. He replaced the helmet, the world snapping back into mechanical focus. The Devastator dropped out of hyperspace near Kashyyyk, the Wookiee homeworld, a verdant sphere below. Yungles teeming with life, with rebellion, with Jedi hiding like rats. Vader felt their presence through the Force, a cluster of light signatures deep in the Shadowlands. The shuttle descended through thick canopy, vines slapping against the viewport like grasping hands. Below, Wookiee warriors howled their defiance, their bows drawn. Vader ignited his crimson blade, the snap hiss cutting through the jungle's cacophony. The hunt was on, but as the ramp lowered, revealing the hostile green world, Vader's mind lingered on the Bacta tank. On the droid's whispered words. The Emperor ordered your life support recalibrated. The suit was his tomb, and Sidious held the key. The Imperial Palace corridors stretched like frozen rivers, their polished floors reflecting the crimson glow of Vader's armor. Each step echoed with mechanical precision, the respirator's rhythm, a metronome counting down the seconds until the next atrocity. Stormtroopers snapped to attention as he passed, their white armor stark against the obsidian walls, their fear a tangible vibration in the Force. Beyond them, functionaries in Imperial gray scurried like startled insects, datapads clutched like shields against his presence. The air tasted of ozone and ambition, thick with the weight of the new order. Vader's daily routine began in the Emperor's throne room at dawn's first light. Sidious would be seated already, a spider in his web of shadows, yellow eyes gleaming with cold calculation. "Report, Lord Vader," he'd command, and Vader would detail the purges, the captured Jedi, the quelled rebellions, each word a stone dropped into the galaxy's well of fear. Today, Grand Moff Tarkin stood beside the throne, his sharp features etched with disdain for Vader's theatrics. "The Death Star's progress demands resources, Your Majesty," Tarkin pressed, his voice smooth as poisoned honey. Sidious steepled his fingers, his gaze shifting between his two most powerful servants. "Lord Vader's methods ensure stability, Moff Tarkin. Your project ensures finality. Both serve the Empire." Vader remained silent, the lenses of his mask reflecting Tarkin's clenched jaw. The rivalry was a game Sidious delighted in, a balance of terror and technology. Later, in the Senate chamber, Vader stood like a monolith behind Masameda as the Chagrian Vice-Chancellor addressed the assembled delegates. "Dissent will be met with the Emperor's justice," Ameda declared, his voice trembling slightly as Vader's presence washed over the hall. Delegates from rebellious sectors shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting toward the black giant. Vader felt their fear, tasted it like copper on his tongue, a sweet, addictive nectar that fueled the dark side within him. The afternoon brought meetings with Imperial intelligence, holographic maps displaying hotspots of insurrection across the Outer Rim. "The Ghent system shows renewed Jedi activity," reported an analyst, her voice tight with tension. Vader's fist clenched, the leather groaning. "Dispatch the Inquisitorius," he commanded. "Leave no survivors." The analyst bowed hastily, relief warring with terror as she scrambled to execute his order. Evenings were for the Undercity, where Vader hunted dissenters in Coruscant's forgotten depths. The air grew thick with decay and desperation as he descended, the gleaming spires of the upper levels replaced by dripping pipes and flickering neon signs. In a cantina smelling of cheap liquor and stale sweat, a rebel cell plotted sabotage. Vader entered without a word, the crimson blade igniting like a fallen star. Blaster bolts ricocheted harmlessly off his armor as he advanced, each strike precise, merciless. Each strike precise, merciless. But the ritual that haunted him most came last. In the quiet hours before midnight, Vader walked the halls of 500 Republica, the residential tower where Padme had lived. Her apartment remained sealed, untouched since her death, dust thick on every surface. He entered the code Sidious had given him, the door hissing open to reveal a tomb frozen in time. The scent of her favorite Naboo lilies still lingered, faint as a ghost's whisper. He stood before her vanity, where a single strand of her hair lay coiled on a brush like a brown serpent. The Force trembled here, saturated with love and loss. For a moment, Anakin Skywalker surfaced, not the Sith Lord, but the husband who had once knelt here, promising to protect her. The respirator hitched, a glitch in the machine mirroring the fracture in his soul. Then, darkness surged, crushing the memory like a vice. Vader's gloved hand swept across the vanity, sending perfume bottles and jewelry crashing to the floor. The mirror shattered, his reflection splintering into 100 distorted monsters. He turned from the wreckage, the apartment silent, screaming louder than any battle. Back aboard the Devastator, Vader signed death warrants with a stylus that felt too small in his grasp. Each name represented another life extinguished, another light snuffed out in his name. The weight of command pressed down, heavier than his armor, heavier than Mustafar's gravity. Yet beneath it all a question burned: was this power, or merely the gilded cage of a slave? As he prepared to retire, a hull projector flared to life on his desk. The Grand Inquisitor's image shimmered into view, his face pale with urgency. "Lord Vader," he reported, "the 501 First has located a Jedi enclave on Kashyyyk, deep in the Shadowlands, Tar. They're preparing to move." Vader's fist clenched, the leather groaning under the pressure. The hunt called, and the galaxy would tremble. The shuttle descended through Kashyyyk's atmosphere like a dagger piercing a living lung. Below, the planet's endless canopy unfurled in shades of emerald and gold. a sea of raschia trees so vast their branches scraped the clouds. The air, thick with moisture and the musk of alien flora, pressed against the viewport like a physical weight. Vader stood unmoving in the command cabin, his black armor absorbing the weak light filtering through the dense foliage. A respirator's hiss was the only sound breaking the shuttle's engine hum, a metronome counting down to violence. Intelligence reports had confirmed it. A Jedi enclave hidden deep within the Shadowlands, the planet's lightless undergrowth. The 501st Legion had secured a perimeter near the rear trail, their white armor stark against the riot of green. Vader felt the Jedi's presence like a wound in the Force, a cluster of light signatures huddled together, radiating fear and grim determination. And something else, a flicker of familiarity, a ghost that made the cybernetics in his jaw ache. He crushed the sensation beneath a wave of dark power. The shuttle landed with a soft thud on a cleared platform woven from living raschia branches. The ramp lowered, releasing the jungle's oppressive humidity into the cabin. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, exotic blossoms, and the sharp tang of ozone from distant energy discharges. Vader stepped out, his heavy boots sinking slightly into the spongy wood. Above, the canopy formed a cathedral of green, sunlight filtering through in fractured shafts that illuminated swirling motes of pollen and spores. Commander Epo approached, his blue-marked armor streaked with grime. "Lord Vader," he saluted, his voice tight with tension. The Jedi entrenched in the Shadowlands, near the Lake Va. Wookiee warriors are reinforcing their position. They've set up energy shields and heavy repeaters. Vader's gaze swept the dense foliage, his senses stretching through the Force. He felt the Wookiees' raw, protective fury, their deep, resonant growls vibrating through the very air. "The Grand Inquisitor leads the initial assault," Vader commanded, his voice a low growl. "Draw them out. Expose their defenses." Apo nodded sharply. "He's already deployed, my lord. His squad entered the Shadowlands an hour ago." Vader turned toward the dense wall of vegetation marking the trailhead into the abyss below. A primal roar echoed from the depths, followed by the sharp crack of blaster fire and the distinctive hum of lightsabers clashing. The Grand Inquisitor had made contact. Vader moved toward the sound, his stride unhurried despite the treacherous terrain. Massive roots, thick as starship engines, coiled across the forest floor, forming natural barriers and treacherous footing. Proluminescent fungi clung to the bark, casting an eerie, shifting glow that painted the shadows in shades of sickly green and phantom blue. The air grew cooler, damper. As he descended into the Shadowlands, the sunlight above completely blotted out by the interwoven canopy. The sounds of battle intensified. The Grand Inquisitor's double-bladed crimson lightsaber flared in the gloom, clashing against the blue and green blades of the Jedi defenders. Wookiee warriors, towering figures covered in coarse brown fur, roared as they fired massive bowcasters that sent explosive bolts tearing through the undergrowth. Inquisitorius troopers fell, their armor pierced by the powerful projectiles. The Grand Inquisitor himself was driven back, his movements becoming defensive, desperate. Vader felt the moment the tide turned. A Jedi Master, his presence strong and centered, launched a counterattack. The Grand Inquisitor stumbled, his footing lost on the slick roots. A Wookiee warrior lunged, powerful arms wrapping around the Inquisitor, lifting him off the ground. The double-bladed lightsaber clattered to the mossy ground, extinguishing as its master was captured. A collective roar of triumph erupted from the Wookiees. Vader ignited his own crimson blade. The snap hiss cut through the jungle's cacophony like a knife. The red light cast long, dancing shadows across the terrified faces of the Jedi and the defiant snarls of the Wookiees. He advanced, each step deliberate, the dark side coiling around him like a living shroud. The Wookiees roared in challenge, raising their bowcasters. Blaster bolts and energy arrows flew toward him, a deadly volley aimed at the heart of darkness. Vader raised his hand. The bolts and arrows halted midair, suspended in a shimmering field of dark energy. With a contemptuous gesture, he sent them hurtling back toward their origin. Wookiees howled in pain and surprise as the projectiles tore through their ranks. The Jedi Masters ignited their lightsabers, forming a defensive wall before their captured prize. Anakin Skywalker, one shouted, his voice strained with disbelief and sorrow. Vader's blade became a whirlwind of death. He moved through the Jedi's defenses with terrifying speed and power, his crimson lightsaber a blur of destruction. One Jedi Master fell, his blue blade extinguished as Vader's weapon severed his spine. Another lunged, only to be lifted off his feet by an invisible hand and slammed against a massive tree trunk with bone-shattering force. A third, a Twi'lek woman with green skin and fierce eyes, fought with desperate courage, her green blade clashing against crimson in a shower of sparks. Vader disarmed her with a vicious twist of his wrist, sending her lightsaber spinning into the dense undergrowth. He raised his blade to deliver the final blow but froze. Her eyes, wide with terror, held a flicker of something else, recognition. Not of Vader, but of Anakin. A ghost of memory surfaced. A sparring session in the Jedi Temple, her laughter as he disarmed her with a flourish. The dark side roared within him, crushing the memory like an insect. The crimson blade descended, ending the Twi'lek's life in an instant. Her body crumpled to the mossy ground. The remaining Wookiees, seeing their Jedi allies fall, roared in fury and charged. Vader met their assault head-on, his blade a crimson scythe reaping through fur and flesh. The forest floor ran red with Wookiee blood. The Grand Inquisitor lay discarded nearby, bound in thick chains woven from Rosha vines. His eyes, wide with fear and humiliation, tracked Vader's movements. Vader ignored him for the moment, his attention drawn to a small ornate box clutched in the dead Twi'lek's hand. He pried it open with the Force. Inside, a Jedi holocron pulsed with faint residual light. Vader activated it. A shimmering blue figure coalesced above the device, a familiar face etched with wisdom and sorrow. Obi-Wan Kenobi, if you are seeing this, the image spoke, its voice echoing with quiet gravity. Then I have fallen and the Jedi Order is no more. Anakin, if there is any part of you left that can hear this, know that I am sorry. Sorry I failed you. Sorry I could not save you from the darkness. Rage, cold and absolute, flooded Vader's senses. He crushed the holocron in his gloved hand, the delicate crystal matrix shattering into 1,000 fragments. The image of Obi-Wan flickered and died. The dark side surged, a tidal wave of pure malice that lashed out at the surrounding jungle. Ancient Rusha trees groaned, their bark splitting, their leaves withering and turning black. Fire erupted spontaneously, fueled by the dark side's power, consuming the dead and the dying alike. The Shadowlands became an inferno. Flames climbed the massive trunks, devouring centuries-old growth in minutes. The air filled with the stench of burning wood, fur, and flesh. Vader stood amidst the conflagration, his black armor reflecting the hellish glow, a demon presiding over destruction. The Grand Inquisitor watched him, his face a mask of terror and awe. The 501 First Legion emerged from the smoke, their armor stained with soot and blood. They formed up behind Vader, their weapons held ready, their expressions hidden behind their helmets, but their posture radiating unwavering loyalty. Commander Poe approached, saluting crisply despite the carnage surrounding them. The Enclave is destroyed, Lord Vader. All Jedi eliminated. Vader turned from the burning forest, his gaze sweeping over his legion. The firelight cast long, dancing shadows across their white armor, turning them into avenging specters. "Secure the area," he commanded, his voice a mechanical growl that cut through the roar of the flames. "Leave no survivors." The clones saluted as one, their movements synchronized, their obedience absolute. As Vader walked through the smoldering ruins, the Grand Inquisitor dragged in chains behind him, the holocron's fragments crunched under his heavy boots. The jungle burned around him, a testament to his power and his pain. Obi-Wan's words echoed in the silence of his mind, a ghost that refused to be silenced. But the dark side roared louder, drowning out the memory in a torrent of fire and fury. The year of shadows was ending, and the galaxy would tremble before the storm to come. The Imperial Palace's highest balcony overlooked Coruscant's Ecumenopolis, a sea of light stretching to the curved horizon. Lord Vader stood motionless, his black armor absorbing the first rays of dawn, the respirator's rhythm, the only sound breaking the silence. Below, the city planet pulsed with the Empire's cold efficiency speeders streaming like metallic blood cells through its arteries, searchlights sweeping the lower levels like predatory eyes. A year had passed since Mustafar's fire forged him, year of blood, pain, and transformation. The Inquisitorius was now a fully operational weapon. Its black uniformed acolytes moved through the galaxy's shadows, hunting Jedi survivors with ruthless precision. The Grand Inquisitor knelt in the throne room, his double-bladed lightsaber presented in supplication. "The Jedi fugitive Jocasta Nu has been eliminated, Lord Vader," he reported, voice trembling with awe. "Her library on Coruscant's underlevel is secured." Vader's gloved hand rested on the child he'd taken from the temple, the boy now trained as an Inquisitor initiate, his eyes yellowed with dark side corruption. Vader's physical state was a monument to endurance. The suit systems functioned flawlessly, each component a masterpiece of Sith engineering. Yet beneath the armor, his body was a landscape of agony, scar tissue pulling at cybernetic joints, nerves screaming with phantom pain from limbs long lost. On Felucia, a venomous vine had breached the chest plate's seals. On Murkhana, a blaster bolt had cracked the shoulder pauldron. Each failure was etched into the durasteel, each repair a reminder of his dependence on Sidious's leash. Mentally, the fractures ran deeper. Nightmares of Padme's death and Obi-Wan's betrayal haunted his meditation cycles. On Kashyyyk, Obi-Wan's holocron message had nearly shattered his resolve. "I am sorry I failed you," the words echoed in the silence of his chambers, a ghost in the machine. Yet each time, the dark side surged, crushing memory, drowning guilt, reforging pain into power. Anakin Skywalker was buried deeper than Mustafar's lava fields. Sidious's verdict came in the throne room at twilight. The Emperor stood before the vast viewport, Coruscant's lights reflecting in his yellow eyes. "You are Darth Vader," he declared, his voice a serpent's whisper. "Anakin Skywalker is dead. The galaxy fears your name. The Jedi tremble at your shadow." He turned, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "You are my weapon, my enforcer, my legacy." Vader bowed, the movement stiff and absolute. "I am yours to command, Master." The galaxy trembled under Vader's shadow. On Mon Cala, King Li Char surrendered without a fight after Vader's Star Destroyer Devastator blockaded their oceans. On Corellia, rebel cells were purged in midnight raids, their leaders executed in the streets as warnings. Whispers of rebellion died on holonet channels, replaced by Imperial propaganda praising the New Order's peace. The Mask's legend was complete, a symbol of terror, so absolute that systems surrendered at its mere mention. Yet beneath the surface, embers glowed. On Alderaan, Senator Organa met in secret with former Jedi, their faces grim as they discussed resistance. In the Outer Rim, smugglers like Han Solo ran weapons to fledgling rebel cells, their freighters slipping through Imperial blockades. The Force itself seemed to shudder, a quiet tension, a gathering storm on the edge of perception. Vader felt it during his meditations, a disturbance that defied his dark side probes. Vader stood on the balcony as Coruscant's sun rose, painting the sky in hues of blood and gold. The year was done. The Jedi Order was broken. The Empire reigned supreme. He was Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, Emperor's Fist, terror incarnate. The suit's seals hissed, the respirator's rhythm steady and inescapable. In the polished obsidian of the balcony's railing, his reflection stared back, a black demon, a machine, a monster. But as he turned to re-enter the palace, a whisper stirred in the Force. Faint, familiar, a name carried on the solar wind. Skywalker. Vader's fist clenched, the leather groaning under the pressure. The ghost was not dead. And somewhere in the galaxy's vast darkness, a new name echoed, igniting the embers of rebellion. The final rays of Coruscant's twin suns bled across the skyline, painting the Imperial Palace's spires in hues of molten gold and bruised violet. Lord Vader stood on the highest balcony, a silhouette of absolute black against the dying light, his armor absorbing the last warmth of the day as the city planet below began its eternal artificial twilight. Below, the endless sea of lights flickered to life, a billion points of illumination marking the Empire's dominion, each one a testament to the terror his name now commanded. The respirator's rhythmic hiss was the only sound breaking the vast silence, a mechanical heartbeat counting down the seconds to the anniversary of his rebirth. 1 year, 365 days since the fire on Mustafar had forged the man into the machine. The suit's systems hummed with flawless precision, each component a masterpiece of Sith engineering and Sidious's cruel design. The chest plate, reinforced with lightning-resistant plating after Murkhana's near failure, sat heavy against his ruined torso, a constant reminder of his dependence. The helmet's lenses, polished to a mirror sheen, reflected the sprawling cityscape, but revealed nothing of the scarred ruin beneath the sunken eyes. The pale skin stretched over a skull, the mouth that could no longer form a smile. Every joint ached with a phantom pain, the ghost of limbs lost to fire and betrayal, a symphony of suffering the suit converted into cold, mechanical efficiency. He was a tomb encased in durasteel, a mausoleum walking. Below, in the throne room, Darth Sidious awaited. The Emperor had summoned Vader at dusk, not for a mission, but for an accounting, a judgment on the year that had passed. Vader descended through the palace's silent corridors, his footsteps echoing like funeral drums, the air growing colder, heavier with the dark side's presence as he approached the obsidian doors. Stormtroopers snapped to attention, their white armor stark against the shadows, their fear a palpable vibration in the force that Vader drank in like nourishment. The doors hissed open, revealing the throne room bathed in the crimson glow of emergency lighting, Sidious seated like a spider at the center of his web. Lord Vader. Sidious purred, his voice a serpent's whisper that seemed to coil around Vader's mind. 1 year. The Jedi Order is broken. The galaxy trembles. Your legend is complete. He rose from the throne, his black robes swallowing the light, his yellow eyes gleaming with cold satisfaction as he circled Vader like a predator admiring its kill. The Inquisitorius hunts without mercy. The 500th Legion is yours in body and soul. Systems surrender at the mere whisper of your name. He stopped before Vader, his gaze piercing the black lenses, seeming to stare directly into the scarred soul beneath. Anakin Skywalker is dead. You are Darth Vader, my perfect instrument. Vader bowed his head, the movement stiff, mechanical, devoid of the grace the man once possessed. I am yours to command, Master. The vocoder droned, the voice a hollow echo of the vibrant baritone that had once charmed queens and inspired armies. The words tasted like ash, like the dust of Mustafar, like Padme's dying breath. Yet they were true. The dark side had consumed him, reforged him, bound him to Sidious's will with chains forged of pain and power. He was the weapon monster. Sidious's thin lips curved into a smile that held no warmth, only the chilling satisfaction of absolute control. Your first year is complete, Lord Vader, but your service is eternal. The galaxy will remember this year as the beginning of the end for all who oppose the Empire. He gestured toward the vast viewport, where Coruscant's lights burned like a billion captured stars. Go, witness the peace you have forged through fear. Then prepare. The hunt continues. There are always more shadows to purge. Vader turned and walked from the throne room, the doors sealing behind him with a final resonant boom that echoed the finality of Sidious's decree. He returned to the balcony, the city now fully illuminated, a tapestry of light and shadow stretching to the curved horizon. The air was crisp, cool, carrying the faint scent of ozone from distant speeder lanes and the ever-present tang of Coruscant's recycled atmosphere. Below, the life of the Empire pulsed, commuters streaming like metallic blood cells, patrol TIE fighters screaming through the canyons between towers, searchlights sweeping the lower levels like predatory eyes. It was order. It was control. It was his creation. He thought of the Inquisitorius, now fully operational under the Grand Inquisitor's watchful, resentful eye. They were his hunters, his hounds, unleashed across the galaxy to sniff out the last remnants of the Jedi, to capture Force-sensitive children and twist them to the dark side. The child taken from the temple's depths now trained in their ranks, his eyes already yellowed, his innocence burned away by Vader's harsh tutelage. They were efficient, ruthless, a perfect extension of his will. Yet Vader felt the Grand Inquisitor's ambition like a cold stone in the Force, a rival waiting for a moment of weakness. It was a weakness Vader would never allow. He thought of the 5 Orlinin First Legion, the clones who had followed Anakin Skywalker through the fires of the Clone Wars. They followed Darth Vader now with a fanatical devotion born of fear and awe, their loyalty absolute, their obedience unquestioning. On Kashyyyk, they had marched through fire and blood at his command, their white armor stained with Wookiee gore and Jedi blood. They were his fist, his shield, the embodiment of the Empire's military might. Yet sometimes, in the silent moments after battle, Vader felt a flicker of something else, a ghost of camaraderie, a whisper of the man who had once called them brothers. He crushed it beneath the dark side's boot. He thought of the suit, his prison and his power. Each scarred plate, each hissing seal, each blinking indicator light was a monument to his survival and his enslavement. It sustained him, filtering the air, regulating his temperature, pumping nutrients into his ruined bloodstream, allowing him to walk, to fight, to command. Yet it also bound him to Sidious, its weaknesses deliberately engineered, its systems calibrated to fail at his master's whim. The chest plate vulnerable to precise blaster fire. The life support controls susceptible to ion strikes. A leash around the throat of the galaxy's most feared being. He thought of the ghosts that haunted his meditation cycles. Padmé's face, pale in death, her beauty preserved even as life fled her lips. Obi-Wan's voice echoing from a shattered holocron on Kashyyyk, whispering words of regret and failure. Shmi Skywalker's dying breath in his arms on Tatooine, her blood staining his hands. The younglings in the temple, their eyes wide with terror as his crimson blade descended. Each memory was a wound, fresh and bleeding, fuel for the dark side's eternal fire. Anakin Skywalker was dead, buried beneath layers of durasteel pain and absolute power. The wind picked up, whipping around the balcony, carrying with it the distant sounds of the city, the hum of repulsor lifts, the wail of sirens, the murmur of a billion lives lived under the Empire's shadow. Vader closed his eyes behind the mask, reaching out with the Force, feeling the ebb and flow of life and fear across the planet. He felt the Emperor's watchful presence, a cold, calculating weight in the back of his mind. He felt the Inquisitorius moving in the depths, hunting, purging. He felt the 501st standing ready, their loyalty a burning star in the Force. And he felt something else, a whisper, faint, distant, carried on the solar wind. His eyes snapped open behind the black lenses, the respirator hitching for a fraction of a second, a glitch in the machine mirroring the fracture in his soul. He focused, stretching his senses beyond Coruscant, beyond the core worlds into the vast, uncharted darkness of the outer rim. There, a flicker, a spark. A name echoing through the Force, faint but undeniable, a ripple in the dark side's still waters. Skywalker. Vader's gloved fist clenched, the leather groaning under the pressure, the cybernetic joints whining in protest. The name struck him like a physical blow, a shard of the past piercing the armor of his present. Skywalker. His name, the name of the slave boy from Tatooine, the name of the Jedi Knight. The name of the man who had loved and lost everything. The name that was supposed to be dead, buried, forgotten. He turned from the balcony, his movements sharp, sudden, the dark side coiling around him like a living storm. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and white as he strode back into the palace, his purpose reforged in an instant. The year was over. The first year of Darth Vader's reign was complete. The Jedi were broken. The Empire reigned supreme. His power was absolute, but the name echoed still. Skywalker, a ghost in the machine, a whisper in the Force, a promise of future conflict. A reminder that even the darkest shadows can harbor light. And as Lord Vader disappeared into the depths of the Imperial Palace, the galaxy held its breath, unaware that the embers of rebellion had just been stirred. The year of shadows was ending. The age of Skywalker was dawning, and Darth Vader would be waiting, always waiting. His fist clenched, the dark side roared, and the hunt began anew.